Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 2, prayer and pledge. Mr. Scott?
Yes, sir. Ms. Coast.
If you'll please bow your head with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and the food we're about to receive. We thank you for the many blessings you've bestowed upon us, including all the leaders here tonight. Please grant us discernment and help us to make wise decisions in leading our community. We pray you will guide us to make decisions that will make a meaningful difference in the lives of our students, loved ones, and community. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Will you join me in the pledge of allegiance? The flag holds that direction. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
All right, thank you, Ms. Colas.
Yes, sir.
All right, we will get on with the program and go to item 3, public comments. Don't have it.
You good. Carry on.
Okay.
Yes,
All
sir.
right, we'll get to the meeting status. Move on to goal setting. Mr. Scott?
Yes, sir. Trustees, in your miscellaneous packet, you have a hard copy printout of the slide deck for this evening. Our plan this evening, you'll notice that we've got many of the leaders from across departments in our organization with us tonight. And our intent is to give the board an overview of some of the major priorities that have begun to be lifted up from each of our 3 big departments: curriculum and instruction, business operations and support services, and student and community engagement. And so our effort continues to be to meet the board's goal of creating an exceptional teaching and learning environment for our students and staff. And so tonight we'll share, again, an overview of the big ideas that are beginning to be prioritized in each of those 3 departments, give the board an opportunity to have some dialogue with us, ask questions, and to set some direction for us. And so without further ado, we're going to jump right into curriculum instruction. So I'll pass it to Dr. Fuller.
All right, good evening,
Good evening.
President Massengale, Mr. Scott, Board of Trustees. So we're going to start off with our youngest learners and talking about pre-K. As you know, we have worked really hard to bolster our pre-K program over the last several years. And we are offering pre-K for all 4-year-olds that would like to come, they can enroll. So we have open enrollment to all of them in our district, whether they qualify or not. And so we have, as you know, a partnership with PreK for SA, and through them we're afforded an opportunity to write a grant each year. And so we've written our grant, and there's 3 big things that we want to be adding and we're looking at for our pre-K program for next year. The first one is really developing a pipeline of support from birth to age 3. And so we know that when our kids come to us at 4 years old, they come with lots of needs. They come with from all different places. Some of them go to preschool, some of them don't, some of them stay at home, some of them stay with grandma or grandpa. And so we want to offer support for all of them so that they get rich language, they get rich pre-reading skills and experiences so that they're ready when they come to preschool. And so one of the things is partnering with all of our child care centers in our district. So we've already reached out to them. We have a list of who they are, and we're working on next year, working with PreK for SA to help also partner with them. Because PreK for SA can offer grants that they can apply for to help fund instructional materials for their programs as well. And so we want all of our centers to know what's available for resources for them as well. As we can invite them to professional development that our teachers go through so they can receive high quality training as well. If we have resources in excess, we can give that to them and make sure that there's that alignment. And then really just helping parents if they're home, what do you do with your child or your baby? Read to them every day, talk. Oral language is so important, and just making sure that everybody in our community is aware of how we can best support our youngest learners. Outdoor learning is going to be another big focus, and we've been working on outdoor learning for the last 5 or 6 years, and we've really done it more of a grassroots effect, where we've given them a little bit of money, seed money through the grant, and we've let them develop their outdoor learning and what that would look like. And we provided outdoor learning experience and training through the grant process. But we're now talking about taking it to the next level. And so I have a rendering here of a picture of what it could look like. And what we're really talking about for these outdoor spaces, it is an extension of the classroom. So we're not talking about your typical recess or outdoor free play. We're talking about it being an outdoor learning space where in the classroom, kids might be playing with blocks. But outdoor, they might be building with PVC pipe or materials that would make sense in the outdoor environment. And so they have similar experiences, but different experiences with different materials that would be more appropriate for outdoors, bigger structures, water, sand, gardening, all of the things that we would see outdoor. And so we know that insects, absolutely, all the good stuff. And so we know that also that these spaces, like they are in the classroom, are fluid. So as we change out centers in the classroom, depending on what they're learning, the spaces outdoor are also changed out with different materials, depending on the time of year, depending on what they're learning in their units. It would all match. And so these spaces are pretty grandiose. They're sectioned, so kids can have a choice, but they are able to go and experience all the different sections throughout the week. So they have lots of different experience. But it's a nice way to get kids outside, experiencing fresh air, experiencing real world objects that we use in our natural environment in the outdoors. So we're excited about that. Our goal is to create these spaces in every elementary school over the next 7 years. So that by the end of the 7 years, while everyone currently has outdoor learning spaces, they will be expanded and bigger and kind of better by the end of the 7 years. The last thing is centered around coaching. And we have really partnered and really brought coaching where they go into the classroom and help teachers either teach side by side, model with them, or provide them feedback at real time while they're teaching in the classroom. And so we are afforded the opportunity with this grant to hire 2 coaches that would be specifically designed and really qualified in our pre-K curriculum to provide that training to all the pre-Ks across our district. And so there's a specific ratio, student-teacher ratio, and so we would qualify for 2 of them based on the number of teachers that we currently have at 24. So it'd be about 12 teachers to 1 coach. And so that's something that we're really excited about as well. The next, yes, sir.
You mentioned the outdoor learning spaces at all the elementaries within 7 years.
Yes.
It seems like it will be a challenge at a couple of the schools because they really don't have a lot of room.
Yep.
Harmony, for example, that campus is only 9 acres. And it seems like that's going to be a unique challenge there without acquiring some more property. One of the things that the committee looked at when we went to that school and that the principal told us was that they need a staff lane like happened at over in your neighborhood at Sinclair. And there really isn't enough room for that around that campus because there just isn't enough property there. So I'm wondering how that, with our focus on equity, is going to impact harmony.
Yeah, I think it'll be a challenge. And the interesting thing is this would involve architecture. And we did get an opportunity to visit a couple of their locations, and the one in City Base, for example, has almost no real property around it, but they were able to utilize every space on that property as a learning space, whereas in Edgewood, near Edgewood ISD, they got a lot more property, and so it looks very different. But I guess suits the needs.
Yeah, the Highland Forest, it doesn't seem would be a problem because they got all kinds of room there. but I would see an issue with Battery Harbor.
No, I think too, looking at what spaces do they currently have that we could repurpose maybe, depending on what it is. And then looking at the existing space to see how can we just, because like I said, the pre-K one, it does not have very much space, but it's amazing how many centers they were able just to put around that building and how the kids move. It seems a lot bigger than it is. So I'm hoping that would be the case.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Fuller, had a question also.
Yes.
You mentioned that we're partnering with these nursery daycare centers, and you're partnering with them to get those kids ready to come into the pre-K at age 4, am I right?
Yes.
Okay, now, the kids that are not in the daycare with the grandparents, what resources would they have to kind of stay abreast of these kids that are getting learning and the ones that are at home are not getting that learning? So do we have any research for the kids that are not in daycare?
So we're gonna work on developing, like if they're at home or if they're at grandparents' house, that we can start to do like, they come in and read a book with their grandparents and help the grandparents and or the parents or whoever their caregiver might be about how do you know, reading with your child, what are the things that you do, how to develop member sense, how to really work on that oral fluency and that oral development. And so we're going to be working on that partnership and helping to develop that over the next several years.
Also, okay, and where would those kids that at home, where would they go and read a book? Would they go to what?
They can go to their home school.
Their home school, that's
Sure,
what I
sure, sure, yeah, maybe bring them into their home school, and then we could just host a morning reading with whoever, you know, with your
Yeah,
guardian or your parents. and-
grandparents.
Absolutely, and then they can come in and read a book, give them a book. And each time, we've done it in the past, where we had a different topic, and then they come in for 6 weeks or something, and we talk about it, but helping to develop that structure so that parents and guardians know what to do with them at home as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a good question too, because what the city of San Antonio has recognized is that there are child care centers, but there's almost no early learning centers for 0 to 3-year-olds in the city of San Antonio. And so they've actually started an effort called Early Matters, and you may have heard or read about it in the Express News at some point. They launched it officially last year. So there's a lot of nonprofit, profit organizations, city of San Antonio, the county, that are all working together to try and support standing up early learning centers around the city. Because access is one of the challenges from a city point of view. So as a school system, like Dr. Fuller said, those are some things we can do in addition to partnering with our early child care centers, the child care centers in our community. We're hoping that by partnering with them in pre-K, we can help them move towards more early learning, not just child care, and support them with resources, training, support, and the grant from pre-K for SA can support that. So it won't cost the child care center any revenue. And so that's just an effort that we're going to make to try and strengthen our community's child care programs so that they rise up to the quality of early learning, and that we can together maybe expand the footprint of early learning centers and engage families who don't have access to early learning.
That's good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other questions? The next thing we're gonna talk about is early learning, specifically around literacy. And so you all have heard us talk about that this has been a focus for ours the last couple of years. And this year actually is the first year that the state rolled out the reading academies. And so it is, in the next 3 years, it is a mandate that all K-3 teachers go and attend a reading academy. They are a year long. They're about 10 modules each. They're pretty intensive. They have 10 months to complete them. And we've supported them through the years by getting like a sub each month to help them complete that work, since it's quite extensive. And what they really enjoy doing is getting together as a team and completing it and working and learning on it together. So kindergarten went through it this year, and they're completing theirs in the next couple weeks, as a matter of fact. And the principals went through it this year. Next year, our focus is on first and second grade teachers and assistant principals. And so that group will attend next year. We have a whole layout of the calendar. They already have and know when they're gonna be going through it. We do partner with PreK for SA on this. They provide the training for us at no cost. This year, if we had to provide it for ourselves and had to pay for it, it would have been about $100,000 for us. And so it's at a savings, and so next year it would be probably double that, because we have double the teachers going. But PreK for SA, as a partner, they're the ones that provide it for us. The only thing that the district pays for is the subs that we incur to give them time to complete it and work together with their team to work on the modules. The focus is really on early primary learning to read, around fluency, decoding, phonics. And so our teachers have expressed great delight in having to go through these. We have seen big gains in our kindergarten teachers this year and their comfort in teaching to read, as well as engaging their students in reading and feeling really good about what they're learning. And so I'm excited to see first and second grade. The state has also allowed us to extend to allow fourth and fifth grade teachers to go through it if they have students that are struggling and they want to go through it. So that's something in the next couple of years we'd like to offer to our fourth and fifth grade teachers if they're interested in going through it, so that we can help them gain that training as well. We've been engaged in an early phonics program, and that's been very successful, and that's been it's not part of this, but it's part of the focus. And so next year, we're going to continue that focus, and the teachers have really enjoyed working with that and have seen great gains with their students. Any questions about the reading academies? Okay, so I didn't get to bring an army with me tonight like some departments did, because some of mine have small children and they are at band concerts and things. So I have little videos to show you of my staff that we made you. So it's the best that we could do tonight. But we're really excited about a new or an extension of our special education services that we're going to be providing. We're going to be embarking on a new journey where we are going to be focusing on how do we support autism in the younger grade levels in elementary. And so Nina Pugh is our Director of Special Education. And so I'm going to play this quick, I think it's like less than 2 minutes, where she's just going to talk to you a little bit about what we're starting.
Good evening, Board President Massengale, Mr. Toscano, and board members. Thank you so much for providing me some time this evening to speak with you about our new innovative service for students with autism spectrum disorder, which is ASD, ages 3 to 9, to be called the Behavior and Language Intervention Support Program, which is the BLISS. The BLISS program will allow for the implementation of intensive applied behavior analysis services, which are ABA services, that will align with current research-based recommendations for students ages 3 to 9. Like all students with disabilities with an IEP, some students with ASD require specialized services in a highly structured and intensive behavior setting. This program will be implemented through a blend of computer-assisted and teacher-led instruction, proven to increase social, behavioral, and academic and cognitive skills. Families will also be provided training to support learning at home. The BLISS program provides services that are recommended and agreed upon during an IEP team meeting. Those students ages 3 to 9 will be provided ABA techniques through multiple platforms such as video modeling, student-centered explorations, and staff-delivered lessons. Students will spend 2 hours minimum and up to 3 hours per day receiving this service. This is not a self-contained classroom, and students will be able to continue in their general education setting or other setting for the remainder of the school day. The IEP teams also consider an extended school day as part of the autism supplement. And this extended school day will also be part of the BLISS program, and students can spend 2 hours per day after school to continue to receive ABA interventions. Research has shown that students with ASD that receive 20 to 25 hours per week can improve skill acquisition and student performance, and the BLISS program will be able to meet those needs. This service will be provided at 3 campuses school year 21-22, Harmony, Pecan Valley, and Tradition Elementary Schools. The BLISS program consists of a district-wide board-certified behavior analysis, which is a BCBA, that will oversee this program. Each campus will have a special education teacher who will receive registered behavior technician training and will become certified. All of the RBT training will be paid for by the district. Each campus will also have 2 instructional assistants who will also receive registered behavior technician training. And again, all paid for by the district. We are really excited about this innovative program for our students with ASD, and we hope you are too. So we look forward to sharing our celebrations throughout the year, and thank you for your time tonight. Good evening, Board President Massengale, Mr.
Okay, so we are in the very early stages of planning this. We have developed the plan, we have developed the job descriptions, and I think they were just posted. And so we're going to start posting them. We've talked to the 3 principals and planned where they're going to be, and she told you where they're going to be. The principals are super excited about this. And so we're talking about space, what it's going to look like, and so it's something that you probably would be hearing a lot more about as we get closer and to implementation. Any other questions about that?
Are those 3 campuses the ones with the most need?
They do have the majority of students with autism, but that's the only ones. And
Okay,
so students from other campuses will be able to go in, if they qualify and there are, then they will be able to attend one of those 3 campuses as well with those services.
So
How are you gonna handle
kids kids at other schools that need to get in that program, then how would they get to that campus? Would we provide transportation?
We would, yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes. Much
And what
like we do in
you said
Utah.
Harmony Tradition was other school?
Harmony Tradition in Con Valley.
Conrad.
Could you comment for a moment about the number of students we would be talking about across the district?
Across all of them. I think it was 28 total. There was like 12, or maybe there was, I have to look that up. I can look that up. It might have been closer to 50. It was like 20, 12, 18, and so it's around that for each campus.
Each of the 3 campuses, yes. I just
Yeah.
wanted to mention that because it's a relatively
It's between
small
12 and 15
number of
for each.
students across the district that would be, fits for this service that have these needs. And then the 3 campuses were selected because they have a higher percentage of autism, a higher number of autism students, but they're also, Harmony is on the south end of the
Right.
district, Tradition's on the north, and Harmony's,
The PV.
PV's kind of central. So that was kind of why we decided on those particular locations. But again, all the students in the district who have this need that are identified through the IEP process would be provided transportation to attend the
Those campuses.
one of the campuses based on proximity or preference.
Absolutely.
And the original thinking around this, we had partnered with A&M San Antonio a year ago and kind of designed this concept, and they applied for a grant that would, if awarded, would have funded this. They weren't awarded, but we got so excited about the quality and potential here that we decided, and we have the need, that we would try to launch it on our own.
Absolutely. And we have the funding, so we were able to make this happen for our students, so we're excited about it. Okay, the next thing is our program evaluation process. So when we're looking at curriculum and instruction department, you guys know we have lots of programs. Everything from the different content areas to AVID and CTE. We have lots and lots of individual programs. And each of them, some of them have their own required evaluations, but we as a district want to be really systematic about how do we ensure that the programs are having the intended impact that we're hoping for them to have. So I have another little video for you. This one's shorter because Jennifer couldn't be here either, but I wanted you to see who's spearheading this work. So I'm just going to give you a little overview.
Mr. Toscano, Board of Trustees, it's me again, Jennifer Casper, Director of Curriculum and Instruction, bringing you information regarding the ECISD CIA program evaluation process that is in development right now and will be implemented during the 2021-2022 academic school year. Program evaluation is the process of systematically determining the quality of a program and how it can be improved. This internal investigation includes focusing on questions and topics of concern, collecting appropriate information, and then analyzing and interpreting the information for specific purposes, allowing leaders to use the data to inform program adjustments. Evaluations can focus on a department or a subdepartment as a whole, or one specific aspect of that department or subdepartment. An example of this might be evaluating the math program in ECISD pre-K through 12, or looking at problem solving in the math department in ECISD in particular grade levels, or pre-K through 12. Program evaluations occur on a rotating schedule. It is recommended that programs are evaluated every 3 years, with 6 to 7 evaluations occurring each year across the organization. The ECISD program evaluation Gantt chart that you can see on the right side of the screen shows a sample of what programs will be evaluated during the fall and spring from 2021 all the way to 2030. This process will allow us to make programmatic decisions based on a collection of evidence using a systematic evaluation tool. Thank you.
So we do what, you guys know as the needs assessments through the continuous growth process. And through that, we do some types of evaluation, but it's a very comprehensive, large scale. And we typically do it on our own, like we are doing it on the work that we do. For this evaluation, you'll be getting people that are outside of your department. You'll be partnering with them, and you'll be saying, here's what I want to find out. And you'll help them come up with some guided questions, give them what we're looking for, and then they'll take a deep dive to see what they learn and then give you feedback. And then based on that feedback, then we'll make a plan for continuing what's working well, and then when we find that things aren't working well, making a plan for improvement. And so that's something that we're going to be engaging in starting this year. We are, as a department, coming together to work on what that's going to look like. They have input on our Gantt chart, which is just our schedule for the next 5 years. We've tried to ensure that it's doable, that it's not something that's too taxing, and that people can still do the regular work, but get that good feedback that's timely throughout the year. Any questions about evaluation? Okay, and I talked to you, I believe last year about blended learning. We're super excited. We started our blended learning journey this year, and so we are knee-deep in implementation and planning, and this is my last video for you, but Jennifer, one more video for you to kind of kick off.
Good afternoon, President Massengale, Toscano, Board of Trustees. I am Jennifer Casper, the Director of Curriculum and Instruction. Thank you for allowing me to present the following information to you regarding ECISD's blended learning journey. Blended learning is a modality of learning that provides personalized learning experiences for students through a variety of digital tools and teacher-led direct instruction. The core 4 drivers of blended learning include data-driven decisions, targeted instruction, student reflection and ownership, and flexible content and tools. In a blended learning environment, students demonstrate control of their learning through making choices around time, pace, path, and place. This may be as simple as a student choosing where to sit down during independent reading, or as complex as a student selecting the activities and the order of completion to show mastery of a skill or concept. ECISD is currently receiving 3 grants to support the planning and implementation of blended learning. These grants cover 7 campuses with plans to expand to an additional 2 campuses by the year 2025. Our current content focus is math, science, and social studies. Over the duration of the grants, EC students will benefit from over $800,000 in grant funding, assisting with costs such as online adaptive programs, technology devices, teacher training, and even furnishing some collab spaces with innovative furniture that promotes collaboration. We're so excited about bringing this innovative modality of learning into our classroom and engaging EC's learners. Thank you.
So this year is our first year to engage in it. Several of our campuses have done book studies, lots of training, and then through digital learning, remote learning this year, we were lucky enough, couldn't come as far as doing technology. We were afforded a lot of technology that helped bolster this work and provide opportunity for students to have access that really helped support and really took us further than we ever thought we could in a much shorter amount of time. And so next year we will be every campus that's on the bottom. So we have Sinclair, Salado, Castle-Lee, PV, Heritage, Harmony, and Legacy. All of them will be implementing it starting next year. This year we have Sinclair and PV are the ones who we're focused on right now. And we chose to do math, science, and social studies. With the reading academies and that work, we were already working on reading, and so we really tried to focus on the other content areas to provide support in those through different means. And so that's why we chose to focus on those through blended learning. Any questions on that?
So is this folded in with the concept next year of having the distance learners being taught by a distance teacher and not having a classroom teacher also doing distance learning? Or is
So it's
this something
actually
completely?
something different, yes, sir. And actually I have an update for the board that I can share at the end tonight about where we currently are with interest from our community for remote learning next year. But this is really what this is. It's just a different mode of delivering instruction. So one of the problems that we've struggled with, and I think this dates back to even when we were all in school, is when it's teacher directed and there's one way you're going to receive the information and one way you're going to prove that you learn the information, and it's the teacher's way, that a lot of kids are left behind, and that a lot of kids never have the ability to learn how they learn best, right? So they don't develop agency. And this is a way for them to have some choices around how they learn and access the information, how they demonstrate that they understand the information. And so that's one major concept here. And the other major concept is that in doing this, students are engaged, right? They're not sitting and getting, and they're able to apply their learning in ways that are meaningful to them. So they're not just learning for the purposes of regurgitating on a test and earning a grade. They're actually getting to apply what they've learned in ways that make sense to them in the world. And they can choose whether that's an essay, they can choose whether that's building and constructing something and presenting something. They can choose standing and explaining, right? So again, it's just a different modality. It's a different way for kids to experience our curriculum in addition to the option of teacher-led. And it leverages technology and face-to-face in-person instruction, and it's a combination of those based on the individual child's preference and understanding of how they learn best. You know, some of us like to read independently, some of us like to have somebody explain it to us, some of us like to watch a video or listen to a podcast, right? So this is a way to strategically and very, in a very disciplined way, actually create those conditions for our kids. And I'm starting to get a little bit in the weeds, but teachers will learn how to design playlists, right? So instead of just teaching a content one way, there's a playlist, and a kid gets to choose their path from this playlist. And as kids get older, they get so much more clear about how I learn, and they get to experience school the way I learn. And so engagement is the result. And that's what we've struggled most with, even when we were all in school. Sometimes we weren't engaged. This guarantees a child's going to be engaged at a higher level, is the theory, right? And so we're pretty excited about this work. There's definitely a lot of evidence, proof of concept that precedes us engaging in this work. And the partners here are Raise Your Hand Texas and TEA, two different grants, but the same structure and system and approach, the same research base behind it. And the teachers that have engaged in the training and have begun to implement blended learning environments they're reporting that kids are really engaged. Actually, if you'll recall, you had a group from Salado last year that presented a project they had done where they studied energy consumption in Salado. That was a blended experience. That was a problem that they wanted to solve. And so they learned some scientific and math concepts in a way that really was applicable, and they were so excited about it, they came and presented to you guys. So that's very different than turning in a worksheet for the teacher to grade, and everybody had to do the same worksheet, right? So those are the kinds of things we hope to create over time. Is schooling is just a very customized, personal experience that really responds to the way you learn and the way you prefer to experience learning. And so we're on the front edge of this, but we're committing to it because we've done our due diligence and feel like this is the next best step to really improve the quality of what we provide for kids in our system.
I remember that, and I was so impressed with that. It would be interesting to know that group, how they were, I said that was last year, would be progressing with that kind of experiential type learning, even say this year or maybe even the next year to be, I'm sure there's a way to
Oh, yeah.
measure some of that, but it would be interesting to know just how impactful that really was versus just an assignment that they really got caught up in and really liked doing. It would be interesting to see what that really
Long-term
measured out
effects.
to.
And so I'll just say one more point. CAS Lead is designed around the same way. And tonight, all of the students, they've been working on a problem of practice, and they presented to a panel of teachers and parents and their classmates and industry partners. They presented their work, and they're getting feedback. They're getting kind of, hey, you really need to think about this, or have y'all thought about that, or you really didn't put enough evidence behind your assertion here. And then they have 2 more weeks to refine, and then they're gonna publicly present what they've done. So that's the way that school's designed. And again, that experience is very different than only the worksheets, the drill and kill, the essay the teacher assigned with the prompt that the teacher selected, right? So they got to find a problem. They got to decide on something they were interested in, they felt was something they wanted to improve in their school or in their community, and they've been working on it. And now they're publicly showcasing, which is hard to hide, right? When you got parents and teachers and industry partners and your classmates that you're presenting to, it's hard to not do your work. It's hard to not be engaged because you'll be exposed publicly, right? So it's just a different way to, again, a different modality of allowing kids to experience the curriculum.
The next thing I want to talk about is we know that through COVID-19 and even before, that we know that the social and emotional development of students is very important. It's important for their learning, it's important for them to be safe, it's important for them to have those skills that they can self-monitor and help to enhance their interpersonal skills with each other, with the teacher, and be able to have those soft skills that we talk a lot about, also with their academic skills. And so 2 things that we're really going to be talking about, focusing on this next year, especially students who are making entry into the school, is really we've designed and we have a comprehensive school counseling program, but really taking a look at that, seeing where are we with it, what's working really well, what's not working really well, and then putting a 3-year plan in place. So our goal through next year is to really develop a 3-year plan to ensure that we are not only in compliance, but meeting the needs of our students currently. We know that through the legislature right now and in the past, there's been a lot of emphasis put on social and emotional development and mandates that have come down that we have to implement. And so through that process, we want to make sure that we're in compliance and that we really have the best social emotional learning and support for our students and staff here at Essential. So that's something that we're really going to be working on. Through that, we have hired a coordinator for social and emotional development. That coordinator is going to be housed in curriculum instruction. Their primary responsibility will be to support and be over the counseling department, as well as communities and schools, our social and emotional learning curriculum, and the implementation of that in classrooms. And so we know that social and emotional learning works best when it's integrated in their classroom, right? So when we're doing math, we're also learning how do we get along and talk to each other and work together. We know that that works best when it's in context because it's natural. It's what we do every day. We work with each other and we have to figure out how do we solve a problem together. That might be a math problem, but how do we do it cooperatively together and get along? And so we have worked this year to really write that curriculum, and next year we're going to be working on that implementation of. And so we're excited about this coordinator who's going to be able to come in and support that work, as well as further our development in that as we go on the next several years. Anything I forgot about that?
The next slide will be the case management.
Yes. So the next big piece that goes right along with it is that case management. So when we're talking about comprehensive case management, we're talking about 3 big buckets, if you will. The first one is awareness and identification. So who are those students that have needs socially and emotionally or academically? So we have this on both sides of the spectrum. and then make sure that we can identify those needs and identify those students who need those. And then we coordinate and plan. And so this is the part that gets a little tricky, right? Because we have lots of different people that are involved. You've got the classroom teacher, you've got the counselor, you've got the CIS. And so we really are going to make a very concerted effort to bring all those people together to ensure that we're looking at the whole child. The child's having academic needs, we know that sometimes that's because there's something going on at home, or there's something going on with a child that may not have anything to do with the reading or math or science or social studies that they're learning about. But they won't be able to learn that stuff until we help them with what's going on emotionally. And so our goal is to really provide those wraparound services to make that plan that's specific for that child so that we can make sure that they are being as successful as they can in the classroom. And then the last thing is really about implementing that plan. So we make a plan, then we go and implement, and then our goal is to come back every 4 to 6 weeks to see how's it going. Is the child making the progress that we expect? And if they're not, then what do we need to tweak from the plan? Or maybe their circumstances have changed, or something else has happened, or what have you. And so we're gonna have dedicated people on the campuses monitoring that, talking to teachers, talking with students to ensure that our plan is working, and if not, then changing the plan and doing something different to make sure that our students' needs are met. And we have that, again, both on the academic and the behavior side.
When you say that you would have someone assess what their needs are, you know, for instance, if they're having problems at home, would this also, would there be a person or an opportunity to identify with a hearing problem or a vision problem?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, the medical aspect, so we have a school nurse, and so if it is something that's medical, they would be brought into the table and be brought of that, part of that collaborative and planned part of that, so that when we're implementing, we make sure that we meet those needs,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so one of the things, Monique, is a great question, because one of the challenges we've been having, as Dr. Phillips said, is we've got everybody in different roles, and they're all working to support this child, but previously they may have been working independent of one another, and unaware that the counselor is also working with this child, and so is the nurse, and so is their teacher. But this would be a structure we want to formalize, where there is a student support team, if you will, that meets regularly at every campus with all the right people at the table to ensure that we know that we've identified kids who have experienced trauma or that are struggling socially or emotionally or academically, that they're on our list now, and that we have a management of that list to ensure that we've identified what's going on with that child, provided the appropriate supports for that child, and most importantly, we're monitoring in 4 to 6 week cycles to make sure it's having the intended effect. And if it's not, we got to stop, reflect, dig deeper, and make an adjustment, because in the past, we might have known about it. Maybe a counselor got a hold of that kid and we just assumed the counselor's got it figured out. The counselor did her best, but then we didn't have a way of formally revisiting with all the right people at the table to ensure, again, that it's working, or that the child might not have other needs. And so we're just taking what we've been doing to the next level, and really disciplining it and structuring it in a way that kids will not fall through the cracks. And the time is more urgent than ever post-pandemic, because we've got so many students that haven't been in school for over a year, so many students that experience trauma that never experienced trauma before, whether that's loss of employment or loss of family members, food insecurities, you name it, right? So we've always had children who are at risk or have experienced trauma. I think we got a much greater scale than we even anticipated. And so this structure is going to serve us well, and it's a necessity at this point to ensure that, again, we're not just working hard with good intentions, we're working hard with good intentions of getting the right results, having the right impact for children.
It's really nice to see that. I'm excited.
Yeah. And I would say, we've been really fortunate over the last several years to add a few positions. So before, it was just the counselor that was on campus.
Yeah.
Now we have a counselor, some of them have CIS, some of them have a social skills person that helps. And so that coordination is important, because it's not just one person at every campus now. We have multiple people that might be providing support, and so they have to work together to make sure that they're meeting all their needs.
So CIS, if you'll, because communities in schools, right? So we had gotten a grant and we launched community in schools staffers at, I believe, 5 different campuses this year. And we're going to be able to add them to every campus. And communities in schools are trained counselors or social workers that are co-funded by community in schools in the district. And they also have access to all wraparound support services, whether that's family support, whether that's mental health counseling, whether that's abuse support for again, families and children. So what we learned is that we have so many resources internally, but we don't have everything that a family or a child might need. But through communities and schools partnerships, we're able to leverage all the resources in the city because of that partnership. And so the case managers that we've had through community schools on the campuses that we've had them on, we've seen tremendous impact. But now our ability to ensure, and I think Steve had a lot of questions early on about, man, is that enough to meet the needs of all the kids that really need support? And quite frankly, not in totality, but we think with the new model that we'll be able to implement and with the ability to add community schools partners at every campus, that we're going to be able to meet the needs with adequate caseloads, that they're not overbooked, if you will, and unable to really give that personalized attention to each child and family. And so we're pretty encouraged by the model and the plan and the additional resources we're able to fund as a result of some funds that we have available, some of which are coming from the government as relief for COVID through ESSER 3 that you've probably heard about in the media of late.
So what kind of things do we have in place to help the parents with this? Because this has been an unusual year and probably need more, I'm sure a lot of parents are just grateful that we're coming out from under this and all of these things are available. But even, I can see the stress of it's good stress, but I can see the stress of parents with all of the things that are kind of going on to help those children. So I'm just wondering what kind of support, sideline support or whatever do you have to kind of keep the parents engaged and knowing that their children are going to be.
In addition to community schools being able to leverage some support for the child through nonprofit organizations in the city, they could leverage support for family counseling and for individual adult counseling. But what we've also learned, we've got a really strong relationship with the Ecumenical Center and many other organizations similar that provide counselor support, bereavement counseling and such to children and adults, is that they're engaged at their level, realizing that they can't wait for clients to come to them, that they need to get into communities. And so most recently we learned that Edgewood, Harlandale, and I believe South Stand, with community and schools as a partner and several other organizations, were able to stand up a community clinic that would be housed in a facility somewhere in the community where there could be mental health support and psychological counseling support in the community, where clinicians are provided by those entities on a routine schedule and accessible to adults and children alike in the community. Because that's something that they've identified is they're not meeting the needs because folks can't take off work, they can't get across town, they can't pick their kid up from school. And so there's greater need that they're able to serve, but they're able to serve more than they're currently serving. And so we've engaged in those preliminary conversations about how we can get clinicians to support our children and families in our community, and we'll see where that goes. The good thing is everybody's really mobilized and engaged in doing something different post-pandemic.
May I add too that another thing that we're doing, it's on a smaller scale than that, but just through this year in our experience, we've hosted Facebook Lives. Our sub-departments have, like special education, and what we've done is we've hit on topics. How do you support your child at home? If your child's having some behavior troubles at school, how can you support them at home? And we've had lots of parents that have really engaged with us, and they have an opportunity to ask questions of the presenter. They talk about scenarios, they talk about strategies, they give examples, and we've got some really good feedback about that. So we plan on continuing to do that. Through this case management, our goal as well is when we have that coordinated plan, right, that we communicate that with parents. So they know what strategies are we using in schools, so we can help them and teach them what can you do at home. So the child then, when they are at school and they're at home, they can see the same strategies. And we know that that works best. If parents are doing something that's different than school, sometimes that can be confusing for kids. And so we're going to continue working on that as well. But I think parent education and support and that partnership is crucial. And I think we have a lot of opportunity to make that stronger and better.
So you talked about 3 or 4 new programs here, and my thinking is that they're fairly new programs. but they all go back to the classroom teacher. So it seems like you're putting a lot more on the classroom teacher than has been there before, whether it's just an increased cooperation or coordination with more people. But it seems like you're adding more to their tasks, their requirements.
I'd respond to that, Steve, by saying what we're doing is enriching programs that we've already got in place and making them more reliable. But what we're actually doing is creating structures and systems to alleviate teachers from having to be all things to all kids, right? If we do these things well, kids show up ready to learn, and the teacher's not dealing with the social and emotional and behavioral issues that are preventing them from learning, because we have a system that isn't requiring a teacher to be a superhero, a teacher to be a counselor and a parent and a coach and a mentor. Oh, and I got to teach you math. So if the system doesn't create the conditions where a child gets everything they need so they can show up so you can just teach them math, then we're actually overwhelming the teacher. And so there are opportunities for us to actually enable a teacher to just focus on being an exceptional teacher. And that's really what we believe we're doing here, not actually putting all this on the teacher.
They still got to coordinate with these other entities that you're creating. So
Can I offer a suggestion or a possibility? I kind of look at it as different. So if I'm a teacher, a third grade teacher, my student's struggling with math and behavior, it could be right now that I'm going to a behavior meeting to talk to them about that and an academic meeting. What we're suggesting is let's just have one meeting. Let's make it simpler and do wraparound services that we talk about the whole child one time. So teacher only has to go to one meeting, and then they have a team of people that are going to be helping them. So it won't just be the teacher that's implementing it, but it'll be a team approach. And so the nurse will be helping with their medical needs, and CIS might be helping with. So what we're hoping is that the teacher doesn't feel like they're at it alone, that they know who the players are around the table, they know who can help provide the support, and they all sit around and make the plan, and it's clear who's doing what, so that everybody knows whose part, what part they play in providing that support.
okay, so where in your plan is the time for the evaluation of how it's going? You've got this plan that says, hey, this is going to make it better, but at one point do you go back and say, is it really making it better for you, or is it making it worse for you?
That is that program evaluation that I talked about in the beginning. That's that part of that. So blended learning will be part of a program evaluation. We'll be getting surveys, talking to teachers and finding out, is it having the intended outcomes? Is it meeting our needs? Are teachers have the resources and support that they need? So that's what we'd like to build that in.
Just the other thing, actually, so the student support team would be meeting every 4 to 6, well, they'd be meeting weekly, but they would be revisiting each child every 4 to 6 weeks to ensure that their grades are progressing, their attendance is improving, their behavior is getting better. And in order to know that, they got to pull data, and they also got to check with teachers to make sure that, John is actually improving. And at that point, the teacher can say, actually it's the same, or it's actually, I'm seeing some new behaviors that are challenging. And that gives the team some information to dig back in and say, well, we tried this, and maybe we need to do more of this than we thought, or maybe we need to add this, right? So again, I think it's just a more coordinated way, and I think I like the way Shannon put it, because I'm reflecting back to being a classroom teacher with 210 kids. And I used to have to go talk to the counselor about some, and I go talk to the assistant principal about another, and I go talk to the coach about another. But now I'm communicating with the student support team. The student support team has all entities. They may have the police officer in there. They've been engaged in that way. The nurse, the parents, they engage the parents for me, right? So I've got this one-stop shop to make sure that everybody who's got a stake in this child's well-being is at the table and had a say in that plan and is monitoring the impact of that plan. So me as a teacher, again, I'm not chasing 210 kids, or in the elementary, 22 kids in all kinds of different directions. So that's the theory. I mean, the alternative is to just say, you got 28 kids, and why is their data not tracking? And that's what we're not doing it. We're doing much better than that.
I just want to make sure that at some point you go back to the people who are actually doing the work and say, hey, is this new way better?
Absolutely.
Or is there a different way?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you make a great point. In no way do I want to make or sound like this is trivial,
No.
that we're taking it's a very complex, and a lot of this is very complex. Our goal is to try and make the complex simple, and so we try to think about things like SEL and embedding that into their lessons so that they're teaching it through academics. So what we've done is in their units, we've written out lessons for them. So the teacher has a choice. They could use the lesson and or the things that are given to them. If they want to change it, they certainly can, but they don't have to make it up on their own. They don't have to find resources to do. What we're trying to do is give them kind of an army of resources and an army of things that they have at their fingertips that they can use to help alleviate some of that, because it is complex. I mean, it's a lot of moving parts for them. And so that's our goal, is to try and help them. But I think you're right.
It sounds like a great opportunity. It sounds like a great procedure.
No.
Okay. One of the things that an organization sometimes does is they get to ask the people who are doing the work, is this work effective? It's a great plan. You have a great plan, but the people who actually have to do that work need to have some input, some evaluation at some point in time, or some input into the building of that plan. Right? It's great to design a power plant, but if you don't talk to
Absolutely.
Yeah,
you
and
don't talk to the people
It's
who
funny,
actually
we're doing
do
that
the
right
work.
now.
Yeah.
We just sent out a
You're-
survey to every secondary teacher. Every secondary
You're dead
teacher is
on.
going.
And I remember several years ago when we were gonna implement a program to begin to do end of year evaluation or end of year surveys of all our staff. And you said, don't you dare ask them unless you're willing to do something about it.
Yeah, right.
Well, we got everybody here, and I think they would tell you that we're on the verge of over asking our staff, because we want candor, we want transparency, we want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly. A, because we want to bring you guys good information about what our staff really need. And B, we want to be kicked in the face if we're good intentioned but overburdening our staff. And we hear it, and they have a voice, trust me.
Well, I have to agree with Steve, because especially after this year, I wouldn't want to add anything else to them when they've had to develop 3 ways of teaching and begging, wishing that their children, what they really want is to see their kids in the classroom again.
Yep.
So to have to deal with anything extra would be tiresome and tax them, and I wouldn't want to see that either, so.
But I think it's a good program. I think a teacher would welcome the program because kids sometimes will open up with you and won't open up with me, and I'm the classroom teacher, but when you send them to someone that can identify with them, they might share things that they would share with the teacher. So I think then they can bring that back to the teacher. The teacher would know how to approach that kid, because you approach each kid different, you know what I'm saying? And kids, like you say, learn different too, So I think the program would be an asset to the teacher, if you just don't take advantage of the
The
program.
structured team
Just throw a
aspect
kid out.
sounds really great, having a whole team
Yeah.
with all the information on the child, working with the child, and then getting it, of course, the teacher being able to sit in just one meeting. Sounds great,
Right.
and the thing that Roland was saying is about, it reminds me of making sure that information doesn't fall through the cracks about this child. Like he said, you think the counselor had it covered, but, ran into a wall, but we have a team now where I can do it, but hey, Ms. Smith has a better idea and she works in this aspect.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of it not falling, and I've had experience with that, with not getting picked up from middle school to freshman and having a learning disability. So, I've had firsthand experience with that. So I think it's better, I think it's worse if you don't have the team and there's not enough people to help, because that's kind of what I've seen. So this looks way more promising.
And I've seen it from a different perspective, I worked in a hospital.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking interdisciplinary approach. And let me tell you, and if you want to improve patient care, you bring everybody to the table and let everybody know that everybody doesn't have to do everything. You catch the things in the no system is perfect,
Right.
but everybody buys in, and you set that. However, you said you're already talking to the teachers on what you said that, so everybody knows what's expected, and no one has to leave everyone has the same goal, but they may have different ways of helping, but everybody has the same goal to see that the person or the patient or whatever succeed, get well and go home, not whatever you want to call that. So I can see the principle of what you say.
Very similar, yeah, I like the terminology interdisciplinary approach is very, very aligned. Last thing I just want to talk to you about tonight is our continuation of our continuous growth, our CG process. You guys hear this all the time, but we are very invested in this process. Currently, our staff is working on their needs assessment across the district, and they're getting ready to wrap that up in the next couple days, as a matter of fact. So taking a look at what's worked well this year, what's not worked well, and then what do we really need to focus on at campuses or departments. And so that's something that we're really working towards. The last two bubbles are staff goals and student goals, and we have focused on those, but we're really gonna take a closer look at those next year. We do staff goals through SLOs, and we implemented SLOs several years ago, and each teacher creates a goal based on their student learning objectives, and then they track it throughout the year, and it's part of their evaluation and feedback. And that's something that they've been doing. But we are going to provide some more training this year. We know that with COVID this year, with things that happen, it's not necessarily been a focus. And so we're gonna help them be successful with those goals and help write good goals that they can measure and feel good about and really track student progress. So that's something that we're gonna be working on. And then student goals as another part. We know that when students take ownership of their learning, they know what they're gonna learn, they have a say in it, that they do better. And so we want students to be able to have a voice in what they're learning, know where they need to achieve and set that goal, and then really work to get there and set up ways for us to celebrate that. And so that's something that we're really gonna be focusing on for next year. Other than that, we feel like our process has worked really well. We're just gonna continue to get better at getting evidence, looking at that evidence for impact, and then monitoring and adjusting as needed. Anything else about CG, some questions about that? Okay. So just to recap, this is not all the things, but because there's lots of things that we do that we're just going to continue to do, right? But I just wanted to give you some highlights of some new things that we're going to be adding. So we talked about early learning, our new autism program, blended learning, social emotional development, and then our next iteration of CG. Any questions? Thank you guys.
All right, our SCE, or Student Community Engagement Department. Ms. Covis.
Good evening, everyone. The first thing that I wanted to talk to y'all about tonight is our student and community re-engagement as we welcome back kiddos and families into our buildings and back to sporting events and band events and all the wonderful things that you like to see kids out, right, and families. We know that they've been out for about 18 months, many of them. We know that they have probably suffered some food insecurity. They've possibly suffered trauma. Maybe a parent lost a job. Like Mr. Toscano said, maybe they've lost a family member. And so we want to be very thoughtful as we welcome them back and make sure that we are meeting their needs. We want to open the lines of communication and make sure that we're being inclusive. It's going to be a focus of ours, making sure that we're listening to our families and our students about what they need as they come back. Make sure that we are individualizing for them. Everything that we do nowadays, right? I mean, even your experience online as you go and search for anything, the ads that pop up are targeted to you, right? And so we know that individualization, customization has become very important now in our society. And so we want to make sure that we are also, as a school district, providing an individualized, customized experience for our kids and our families as they come back in, especially to make sure that they're comfortable coming back into our buildings and coming back into the learning environment. We also know that we need to integrate, right? We need to connect everything and all of our communication, everything that we're doing with the campuses. It all needs to work through the campuses. We actually, through our continuous growth process, embedded points of time where we're asking campus leadership to reach out to parents, students, and teachers to gather that feedback. So now it's embedded in our framework of when they parallel system. There can't be a parallel system of engagement. It has to be together, it has to be cohesive. We've got to work through our campuses to make sure that our parents are connecting with the educational system and being involved in their students' learning and in their students' experience at school. And then we want to be impactful, right? The things that we communicate in the ways that we bring them back. Whenever we are offering up opportunities, we want to make sure that it's the opportunities that they're interested in, and we want to give them something to do. Brandon calls it a call to action, right? And so we want to make sure that whenever we communicate with them, we're empowering them, all right, to have impact on their students' education through their involvement. And so that is our plan, right? We're going to work with campuses to achieve all of this, and we're going to re-engage our students in our community as they come back to us now that the pandemic has subsided. Are there any questions or thoughts about that?
What are some of the challenges why you think some of the kids don't want to come back?
So I know of a couple of different kids, so in my mind, I'll give an example. We have, I know of a young student. He is a 4th grader at Oak Crest, and his parents really want him to come back and re-engage, but he has heard so much in the media about the pandemic that he's scared to death. He's scared that if he comes back to school, he's going to get COVID and he's gonna die. And his parents are having a hard time reasoning with him. They have him in counseling. They're really trying to help him understand that he's not in danger. But it's been a very emotional time for the parents and for the child. Because again, the parents want him to come back. They feel like his education is suffering. He's at home alone during the day for most of the day. And so they also are very concerned about his socialization. So now that he's been away from people for 18 months, he didn't want to play soccer. He's played soccer for years. He didn't want to come back and play soccer because he felt nervous about being around kids. So he's developed a little bit of social anxiety. And so our kids, as they've been gone for so long, many of them have developed a little bit of social anxiety. Like, now I have to go back and talk to people. Now I have to go back and be in a group, and I've been at home by myself for so long. What am I even going to say to anybody? And so that's one example.
I would think that would be what's happening. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. I hope I clicked the right way. Yay. Okay, so we've learned so many things, right, through the pandemic. I mean, this has been 18 months of education, y'all. We have learned and learned. And one thing that we've learned is that we need to be very intentional about our parent and caregiver education program. And so we are currently planning to work with our partners, right, our community partners, and develop a robust educational program for our parents and our caregivers. There will be on-time topics and multiple modalities of how to access it, and it will be easily accessible in an archive. And so I'll give an example. As kids were at home doing remote learning, right? Many of them are online. They're online all day. And we started having issues with kids getting into dangerous situations on the internet. And so we very quickly worked with our SAPD partners, and we had a guest speaker come, and we did a Facebook Live with him. We had about 60 people that watched it live on Facebook, and he talked all about dangerous trends on the internet and what parents should look for, how to educate your kids and talk to them about the dangers. And spent about 1 hour and 22 minutes talking to parents and answering questions for them. Of course, it was recorded, and so we put it online and we put it on all of our social medias. And do you know we've had over 1,000 views for that 122-minute little dangerous trends workshop that we offered parents? Over 1,000 views. So we know that parents are looking for guidance, they're looking for help. We plan on asking, right, when I say on-time topics, we're gonna ask for feedback from our parents and our caregivers, like, what is relevant? Like, what do you need to know about? What do you want more information on? As we plan out the topics for the month, we are planning on doing it monthly, and it may happen more than once a month depending, because we also have grandparents raising grandchildren, and we're thinking about running a separate, education program for grandparents raising grandchildren, because that's just a special need. It's very difficult, and so having an outlet and being with a group of other grandparents that are raising grandchildren, they're able to have conversations, they're able to ask questions, they're able to relate to each other and help each other in meaningful ways. And so we're talking about that right now, and we're going to get some feedback from the community as far as whether there's interest in that. And again, whenever I say multiple modalities, we're thinking for the grandparents raising grandchildren series, those will be in person and will, not online, but then maybe for some of the other ones, it'll be online, and then we'll post it. We're probably going to do some modules where parents can just access it online. So there will be lots of ways that parents can get guidance and assistance from us as needed. Are there any questions or thoughts about that? Awesome. So next up, our restorative and transition services. So we know we're pretty good at when a kid messes up, there's a consequence, right? They're in school suspended, they're out of school suspended, they go to rebound, they go to DAP, they're first offenders, they're in the first offender program, they're on a contract. We have all that down. But we also know that students who don't have a strong connection to an adult, positive adult at school, who don't have a strong connection to their school community, who don't have a strong connection in their community, they tend to reoffend. They tend to be in trouble quite a bit. And so what we want to do is we want to be very thoughtful about how we develop and restore relationships for kids after they've been in trouble and possibly been removed, or they're a first offender and they get a first offender contract. We want to be very thoughtful about how do we connect them? How do we make sure that we are providing excellent experiences that get them connected to a mentor, to some service learning, right? Whenever kids go for service learning, we follow the work, serve, learn, play model, right? And so our kids get to go do some work. Maybe they go to Land Heritage Institute and they remove invasive species. They get to then learn a little bit about the history of the land, walk through the little museum. So that's the learning. And then they get to play, right? They might get to get on the bikes and ride down the trail and enjoy themselves some. So they work to serve, right? They learn and they play. And we know that whenever kids have those experiences, they feel connected. They feel connected to the people that they had the experience with. They feel connected to their community. And so we really want to build those kinds of experiences. And so we put our money where our mouth was, and we hired Mr. Josh Gutierrez as our Director of Restorative and Transition Services. And he's also the administrator at ECISD as well. But his big work this year is going to be creating a system for restoration and a system for transition. And Dr. Fuller talked about case management. And so our big goal is that we're going to have a case management system for all of our first offender kids. And we're going to have tight plans for them to where we know who their mentor is, when they're showing up, what they're going to talk about, how we're going to restore that child, right? And teach them better behaviors than maybe what they had previously displayed. And we're going to be monitoring that. We're going to track it. We're going to monitor it. Additionally, we've got kids who've been in school, out of school, DAEP settings, maybe for 30, 45, 180 days. They've been at JJAEP. They've been at BCLC. And when they're done, we create a little checklist, right, of things for their transition plan, and we transition them. They meet with an administrator for 20 minutes, maybe less, and we talk to them about good behavior, and we put them on a contract, and we tell them, this is what you gotta do to survive. Go! Good luck, yeah, you can do it. And then, maybe we check up on them, we mean to, and maybe they have a few teachers that they connect with, but mostly we have not tracked it as well as we would like to. And we found that in our needs assessment. And so that is our big goal that Mr. Gutierrez is gonna achieve for us in collaboration with all of us, is a case management system for all of our kids that we're transitioning back, to make sure that they have a solid plan for coming back and how we're going to really reintegrate them and support them on campus. Are there any questions about that?
Yeah, so just at the highest level, right? I mean, you guys get it. Consequences alone, discipline, if you will, punishment alone does not permanently change behavior. In most cases, it temporarily modifies behavior. And so it's just one piece of the way that you help kids develop better behavior, make better choices. But the real piece is what you got to invest in. And this is the model that we've had the most success with. When we do this right, kids actually learn what they did wrong. They learn what other options they had available. They feel bad and they want to make it right. And then we set up a plan to help them make it right. We don't make it right for them. They got to make it right. This is who you upset. This is who you offended. This is what you damaged. So make it right. And now you're equipped in the future. If you're in that situation again, you have other options so that you don't make that same mistake. And then we help them transition back into the classroom or back into the school after making everything right. So our goal in education is not only to teach them math, science, social studies, etc., it's to teach them how to be employable, which means, and to be a good person and contributing member in society. Like, you gotta, when you agree with somebody, you can't just punch them in the face. When you want something that ain't yours, you can't go steal it, and when you're upset with an adult, you can't disrespect them. And so children don't always all come with those skills. And when they make those mistakes and we just punish them, very few of them actually learn from the punishment that I can't do that and then forever become a better child. So in addition to the consequence, or what precedes the consequence, then the appropriate decision about what consequence is appropriate as part of the whole package, the whole plan includes these principles, right? And so I do want to say that we've done, the reason we're making this commitment is because we've done a lot of this well by chance. We haven't done it by design, where we can guarantee reliably any kid that makes a mistake, we're going to have a very thoughtful process to make sure they learn a life lesson. We give them the skills they need to not make the same mistake, and then they restore the situation and they can get back into that classroom or with their peers or in that school, and everybody's ready to accept them, right? Because you got to think about the victims in those situations too and restore all of that. So it's a lot more involved than just the punishment.
Yeah.
Is what we're suggesting.
Do we, I know you said you'll approach this as a team effort, but are we aware of the team that possibly worked with them prior to them being in trouble or whatever? And we know their issues, whether it be medically, emotionally, personally, and these are supported also while they're working on this other situation, so they're still being supported in that way?
Yes, ma'am. So we have our child study teams, and we talk about the whole child, just like Dr. Fuller said. And so we know if this child, lost their father last November. We know if this child, comes from, is in foster care. We know all of those things, and we take all those things into consideration as we build that plan for them to come
Yeah,
back.
so the same process we were describing earlier
Correct.
integrates these discussions. This is just another, it's adding depth to what that team would have as options for how to respond to this child who currently is having behavioral challenges that are probably the root cause of these academic issues as well. So it's not there's not like another committee or team we've got to form for these reasons. It's the same committee we were talking about earlier.
Thank you.
So Are there any other thoughts or questions about that?
Who are their mentors?
So we've been working on that, and we are going to partner with ECPD and establish a robust mentor program where they're able to go in and work with these kids, especially our first offender kids. And then after that, we're gonna ask for possibly teacher volunteers. I know I'm definitely gonna sign up to mentor a couple of kids. And so I think it's gonna be open, we'll make a call for adults. We also have a program through SAPD where we have officers that will come once a week to visit with the kids. So we're gonna be exploring those options and building all of that out.
Yeah, as we think about it, mentoring is not the thing, right? Mentoring is a piece of the thing. The thing is that everybody's now aware of what Ashley's challenges are, and the counselor's got a piece of that thing. And the teacher's got a piece of that thing, right? And we also happen to say, we could probably connect them to a male role model that is our campus officer in addition. So it's not like mentoring alone is gonna be where we send the kid. It's part of it's just one more tool that, for some kids, it makes sense to add a male role model or a female role model from some of these partners. But that alone is not the mentoring that we're talking about.
Right, yeah, it's the plan and just the team effort around this child, where we all know what the goals are, whether we're meeting them or not, how we need to modify and adjust, what works for this kid, what doesn't, and support them and their teachers. So.
Awesome.
So I'm sure you've all heard that out of 47 districts that applied for the Holsworth Partnership this year, we were selected as one of them. And I'm talking about Holsworth tonight because I am honored to be the district champion and will be coordinating some of this work with the Holsworth Center and our district team. So this is a 5-year commitment, and it's a $6.5 million investment being made in our district. And what Holsworth does is they help us to develop and achieve our vision for leadership and our leadership pipeline. And so the first layer is to develop personal leadership. And so that's what the district team will be doing that first year, is developing personal leadership. And then that's gonna equip us to develop other leaders across our district, and that will enable them to develop more leaders across our district, right? To develop that leadership pipeline. We want to grow and empower others, create change, have a pipeline of ready leaders, an engaged culture, which will ultimately create excellent and equitable student outcomes. And there's a quote right there. I'm going to step out of the way so that y'all can read it. It's actually on your handout. That's from a principal. This is truly legacy work. As we go through this, the goal is for us to really define our vision and create that pipeline of strong leaders to where when we're gone, that's okay. We've got lots of leaders behind us who are empowered and equipped and ready and able to run things and to empower and equip the leaders that are coming after them. So this is an amazing opportunity. I've heard one educator who's been in education for 30 years and said he didn't think that he had, he had been to it all. Y'all, there's nothing he hadn't heard, okay? And whenever he went through this process, he said it was the absolute best, professional development, the best personal growth experience that he has ever experienced, he's ever had. And so it's a great opportunity for us. We're very honored. We had wanted to do it a couple of years in a row prior, but didn't feel like we were ready yet, right? Are we ready? We have the systems in place, but we do. We feel like that, this year we felt like, yeah, we got this. We can do this. We have the systems in place. We have our, established means and methods of creating that leadership pipeline now. And so we're ready for it, and we're pleased to be accepted.
So we've developed a profile of an EC leader. We're really clear the kind of leadership that they expect in this organization. We're pretty clear about the kind of leader we want to develop. But what we also know is we're only as good as our bench, right? And one thing we've struggled with, maybe not struggle is probably too strong a word, but one thing that we aspire to achieve is that we've got this shark tooth kind of leadership. When a shark loses a tooth, the next tooth just pops up. We want a deep bench. If you think about a sports analogy, the very best programs, the very best organizations, or 10 seniors graduate, the next year it's like, where did they all come from? They're just as good as they were the year before. That's leadership density, right? And we want to create that. And so we know how to develop leaders. We just we're not confident that we've developed such a reliable system that we can develop leadership depth across the organization. So we believe that this partnership is going to help us create that depth in our organization, so we have leaders ready to step up and lead the EC way. And one thing that we have never heard from them that we want to make sure that we're not going to lose sight of is we're not leading the Holdsworth way. We're not leading the way Garland's going to lead, or Victoria, who happen to be in this cohort. We're leading the EC way. So they're going to help us think about ways that we can create our reliable system for developing a depth in the number of leaders that we develop internally. And so we're pretty excited about the opportunity. Again, it's a $6.5 million investment over 5 years. And I think by the time it's all said and done, I'm pretty comfortable have more than 100 leaders really get to experience the training and the development and collaboration. Most of this is going to be hands-on in the work. So OJT, if you will, 70% of what we'll experience is coaching and training and development as we do our job in the work here. It's not go somewhere, get dipped, get trained by a guru, and then come back and try to implement it. They don't use that model. So that was another thing that appealed to us, because we want to do the work, but we want to learn to do the work better as we're doing the work in our home, here in our community. So those are some of the things that I think maybe impress them about our perspective of how we think we can benefit from this partnership.
One of the things that I think we did extremely well years ago was develop the profile of an EC graduate. Is one of these steps profile of an EC leader?
So we did that, but we did it internally. And I think, to your point, there's an opportunity for us to engage a broader community around revisiting that and making sure that it's actually valid to the community, right? Because we learned a lesson when we did the profile of the student, because it was a very collaborative, wide range of audiences and shareholders, right, at the table. That we mimicked that process, but again, only with staff internally. And we think it's a pretty good tool, but it doesn't live, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't live like the profile of an EC graduate, maybe because we weren't as inclusive.
If that ends up folded into your culture,
Yeah.
then it's self-perpetuating.
That's right. That's right.
And I mean, and when you're talking about leaders and building a bench, you want to make sure that those people fit the profile.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's almost that first checkbox.
That first screen, that first filter,
Do you
right?
have this? Yeah, no, and I don't know that any of them are more important than the others. They're all kind of co-equal. That's why you put them in that scattergram instead of listing them. But I think it's really critical.
Yes, sir.
I was impressed with the documentation that came from the center when they were going to be embedded in our organization if we weren't just going there. Hopefully that'll give them a chance to visit with us and learn a little bit more about the East Central way.
Sure.
So it was good.
Sure.
I was impressed with that.
So next, all means all. So in order to achieve our exceptional learning environment that we strive for every day, historically, we've made great efforts to make sure that all means all, to make sure it's every student, every minute of every day, right? And so years back, I know equity is a buzzword right now, but we've been doing that work for a very long time. We've all means all, we've been doing that, y'all. And so in East Central, we have really, over the last 5 years, we doubled down. We have an equity task force and we have an equity steering committee. And those groups have been doing lots of work looking at data. And I'll give you one example. We realized, 5, 6, 7 years ago, that we had all of our advanced academics, like from 8th grade up. You walk into those classrooms and the kids in the classroom didn't mirror our demographics, right? And so we did a little digging, a little investigating. We recognized that some of our practices maybe were a little bit exclusive as opposed to inclusive, right? You have to qualify, you have to sign a contract, your parents have to come. If you fall below 70, you get moved out, things like that. Well, we changed some of those things up, right? And now we're very proud to say that 7 years later, you walk through our advanced academic classrooms and the populations mirror our actual enrollment population, because we now offer an opt-in. You don't have to qualify. If you want to challenge some coursework that is academically rigorous, you can. Anybody can. And once you choose it, you don't get out very easily. So if you're failing, guess what? Too bad. You're going to come in for tutoring. You're going to get in here. You're going to do the work. There's not a choice. There's no opt-out. And so we know that access comes before achievement. And that's one example of a way that we made sure that all kids who wanted to be in advanced academics had the ability to do it, whether or not their parents would sign the contract, whether or not their parents were able to come up and meet with the teacher, whether or not they always are passing with a 70, right? And so it's been very beneficial for our students and for our community. So as we have done this work, and that's one thing that we were able to straighten out. There have been a couple of others, or many others. And now we're getting to the point where we really feel like we need some external eyes. And so what the Equity Steering Committee has lifted up as a big need is an external equity audit. And so that's where we would engage a consultant who would come in, lift the hood, kick the tires, and help us see what we don't see, because we feel like as we look, we've fixed, we've created, we've made better systems, we've done a lot of things. And so now we're looking at it and we're like, what's next? What's next? Well, we're not quite sure what's next. So we better get some experts in to look and give us some feedback. Now, they might help us make a plan, but it'll be our plan. They'll give us the feedback, and then we decide what we want to act on. Okay, so they're not going to come in and mandate that we do anything. But if they come in and look and hold up that mirror for us and help us to see where we might have some opportunities, we'll be able to address those. And so we're very excited to engage in this work. And make sure that all means all. It really is every kid, every minute of every day getting that exceptional education in an exceptional learning environment. Are there any questions about that in the work that we are going to engage in?
No, you did such an amazing job. Do you have any questions?
Awesome. Okay, so I'll do a little recap. We're going to be re-engaging our students in our community. We're going to be focused on parent and caregiver education programs. We're going to focus on restorative and transition services. We're going to engage in the work to make sure that all means all in everything that we do. And we are going to be working on that leadership pipeline with the Holsworth Center.
I have a quick question. Where we have parent and caregiver education, and we talked about earlier when we have the EC Lives and stuff, I always wonder, not everybody has the internet. And a lot of people miss all that. Do we have a way of, we send that out written in a little brochure, or how do we share that learning information as far as parent and caregiver education program and stuff that was talked about on the EC Lives, like the special education
Right.
information on how I deal with my child at home? How do we get that to those people?
That's a challenge that we need to solve. Monday, admin council, we had the same conversation, and
Right.
it was around pre-K, right? Because we've got this, all 4-year-olds are eligible now. And we're looking at our enrollment, and while it's up, which we're excited, man, we want 600. Because we've always gotten around 400, and we've always known there's always about 200 more 4-year-olds out there that aren't with us. So we want 600. So we've done everything on social media you could possibly do, right? Automatic call outs, you name it. We did put banners across roads and strategic places in the community. But beyond that, we're thinking we need to put door hangers on doors at homes where we know there's a 4-year-old. We need to put something in mailboxes that says, hey, attention, in case you didn't know, right? So there are some things that we might have gotten ahead of ourselves on because the world is so digital nowadays that we forgot. And there's so many grandparents raising grandkids, they're not on social media. And if I'm being real honest, I'm on Facebook and YouTube Live, but I don't have Facebook to this day. So that postcard might be good in my own mailbox. So we need to double down on some of those things. And so we just talked about it Monday, and I think it applies here as well.
Awesome, good, thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Judy.
Y'all just want to see if I can use this clicker right.
Right there. Yeah.
Okay.
Keep clicking.
I love listening to Shannon and Ashley talk about the students because that's what we do. And that's what we're all about. And then it comes to me and I start talking about numbers. But it makes us realize what we're doing. But one good thing is you can see our fund balance for the past 4 years for the general fund and debt service. And this is a testament to the leadership of the board and the leadership of the admin and the leadership of the principals and the departments of being very good budget stewards. So we were able to, because I was kind of worried about this last year, we were able to increase our fund balance to 25 million in a very rough time. And if you see, we went from 31 million in 16-17 to 20 million in 18-19. And that was deliberately done to improve our schools. We told our taxpayers, hey, we're going to go for a bond, but we're going to use our fund balance to finish these projects and do the projects for our different schools. So we kept our word and our fund balance went down. And then COVID hit, and then I was worried that we might not meet our 2.5 months that we would have to keep. But then we ended up with 25 million, which is over $8 million more than what we had to keep for 2.5 months. And again, it was due to everybody watching their budget very carefully. So I'm proud of how the general fund and the debt service has increased. I'm hoping that we will see the same for 2021. Maybe not near in that area, but to still say have a very healthy fund balance. Y'all have any questions on the fund balance?
Great job.
Oh, it's all of y'all. It's all of y'all.
Great job.
And this is the one I love to see because East Central has the lowest tax rate in the Bexar County. We are at, it's probably easier for me to see it right here. We're at $1.1420. And we are lower than Alamo Heights, all of them. And what else I love to do is I love to tell the people that I know or who I might work with that live in another school district, and I tell them how much you would save if you lived in East Central School District. So again, that is a testimony.
Turn in a resume before you get go invite them over here. Screen them.
But you know what, the bad thing is I have to tell myself that because, unfortunately, I don't live in East Central any longer. So I have to eat my own words on that. But, it's another thing, it's a testimony to how careful we are with our debt service money, how careful we've been going out for bonds, how careful we've been with our M&O. And so that to me is a very good showing of how we're doing with our tax rate. And I believe that next year in 21-22, we will go lower in the no because of the tax compression. and because of our assessed value. At this time, I don't know how low it will go. It might be a couple of cents, but it will again be because of the compression. Okay, now here's a very good chart, and we shared this with our bond committee. And it shows all the school districts and how their debt ratio is. And you can see, we're just a little bit above Alamo Heights. That means that East Central has been careful and not just issuing debt when they didn't need to. They issued debt when they needed to, and then they built what they needed. They didn't have to have the fanciest. We did the best we could for our community and made them proud. So we have, our debt ratio is just right above Alamo Heights. But you look at Hardingville, they're almost off the charts. I don't know how much more debt they can issue because there is a formula that they have to use. It goes with their assessed value and it comes with what the state says. And they're pretty much getting very close to that. Same way with Shirk-Cibolo. But you see that the average is like 9.16, and we're like 5% on debt ratio. So this is really a good slide to show people that we can afford to go out for a bond. That East Central is in a very good financial position to go out for a bond. Okay, ESSER. Okay, ESSER is that new grant, not really a grant, but it's coming to us. And for East Central, will over the next 3 years get over $15 million. That is almost 15 to 18% of our current budget that we will get in ESSER. At least 20% must be addressing learning loss, like summer learning, enrichment after school, and emotional student needs. The grant period goes back to March of 2020, and it ends in September 2024. This is massive for East Central. It's massive for most school districts. Houston ISD got over 800 million. It's very massive, but when you get money like this, a lot of issues come up and a lot of things you have to be careful for. And what we have been blessed is that we have had a lot of webinars, workshops from Region 20, from TEA, from TASBO. I think I've seen 3 or 4 this week, and I'm signed up for 6 more in the next 2 weeks because there's a lot of unknowns. Can you do this? Can you not do this? Can you think outside the box? Can you not think outside the box? One thing that I don't want us to do is I don't want us to try to pay us back from things that have already been audited and done. So anything that ended August 31st of last year, I think those should be off the table. But there's a lot of things we did this year that we can pay ourselves back, not hurt the 15 million, build our fund balance up, and help us get back on our feet with our enrollment. We have a committee together, but we found out today that the committee that we have together has to be a lot broader. It has to include principals, it has to include students, it has to include teachers, it has to include other administrators, and you have to document this. And we are doing a good job of doing that. We had our first DEIC meeting and they explained that. And so they have a plan on how to get the committee together to have everything that we need to do to make sure that we're doing this correctly. And so once we do that, then everybody's going to come to the table and say, can we do this? Can we do that? How can we do this? And then we'll have to prioritize which ones we want to do. Which ones do we want to do? Which ones can we sustain ourselves? And they talk about sustaining themselves, which is wonderful. You have to be able to handle it in 3 years when this money goes away. But I look at it as a way also to get ourselves back with our ADA, that we can sustain some of these programs even after this goes away, because I believe our ADA would be back up there. So we won't have some of those issues like they're saying, be careful of what you do because you won't have that money. I'm hoping that our ADA will be back up there so we can continue a lot of these programs because they're all needed. So ESSER is going to be with us for 3 years, and we have to be very careful because not only are they telling us to get committees, they're hiring auditors. So you can guarantee that they will be down here and they will be looking at what we purchase. And if they don't like it, we're gonna have to pay it back. And we don't wanna do that. We wanna use this money to the best ability for East Central, and we want to do it the right way. And I think with the committee and the leadership and everybody's involvement, that we will be doing this the correct way. And we'll be reporting to y'all how we're gonna be spending that money, just because y'all are part of this also. So if y'all have any questions about ESSER, some things I can answer and some things I can't, because it's changing every day. But you know how important it is when TEA schedules 6 meetings in a week and a half that I have to attend. So you know that they are taking it serious, and they want every school district to take it serious.
Do they want you to, I'm sorry, do they want you to, I noticed here it says 20% must be used on addressing learning loss and whatever. Do they expect you to use the rest of it and show where you have used it and implemented it towards students?
So we'll have to submit a plan at the end of the collaborative process that Judy was describing. And that plan must reflect at least 20% of those dollars going to address these things. There's about 15 things I've identified that would be allowable expenditures, but our plan will reflect our needs. And of course, that plan would probably look something like the first year we would spend a larger percentage of the amount of money, and then gradually a smaller percentage until the end of that third year where we wouldn't rely on it anymore. And the expenditures, as Judy mentioned, seem to be wise if they're not recurring costs. Right. So they would be, air quality is one thing that you can address with this. So we would want to make sure that all of our HVAC controls, all of our HVAC rooftop units that are aged and maybe aren't as efficient and able to circulate that air, maintain air quality, that they're addressed. Well, those things you can take care of with these funds, incorporate or update our replacement cycle, and we can maintain that with our revenue, as opposed to needing, hiring a bunch of staff that once those 3 years are over and this money's gone, we've got a budget for it, right? Or cut the staff. So we're definitely distinguishing between recurring costs or one-time costs and being very mindful of the compliance-oriented aspects of this funding, which we're very familiar with having to comply, and we'll dot our I's, cross our T's, and do everything that we need to do to make sure that we don't have any issues on the back end, and that we can maximize the benefit and the impact of these resources, because it's a windfall. It's tremendous. And it does give us a lot of opportunity to really get ourselves firmly on our feet, and take care of ourselves well into the future, and not really having residual effects of the pandemic and enrollment loss and those sorts of things that we experienced this year. And all the extended, that sanitization, all of the things that we had to do in response to the pandemic. We had staff that weren't working for quite a while that we paid, right? So there's a lot of things that were costs that were associated with the pandemic that we did not budget or anticipate for, that we can essentially recoup using these funds. So again, get back on our feet, get our enrollment back where it would be, and continue to grow it, and just keep moving forward. So we can use this as a catalyst for that if we're really wise and thoughtful, and we will be. And we'll obviously, you guys will have to approve any of these budgets, so we'll keep you guys abreast and seek your support.
Okay, thank you.
So is this process, you create the plan, you submit it, they approve it, and then the audit is to make sure you did, you said what you
That's correct.
were gonna do. It's not wait a minute, here's the idea.
Correct.
That we didn't look at your plan well enough, and you're spending this money where you shouldn't have.
Right.
That's not part of the audit. The audit is just a typical audit. You said you were gonna do this, did you do that? Okay. And the plan is approved before that?
Yes, sir.
That is the way the typical audit goes. Dr. D and I had the pleasure of having a federal audit 3 years ago on our E-rate.
We all experienced a little bit of it, y'all know us.
If y'all had the pleasure of doing that, you need some help.
Nice.
That's like saying you had the pleasure of an IRS audit.
Or a state sales tax audit, trust me, yeah. They're
So-
very pleasurable.
A little sarcasm, a little sarcasm.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that
I
we
enjoy
approve
those
this
so much.
up front and then just make sure that we did what we
Yes.
said we would.
And we have to document.
And that's fine.
And that's the best thing.
And my question again, it has to all be spent up.
Yes.
Because what you don't spend by that end of that time, you lose.
Okay.
I'm sure
Okay,
you can spend it.
compensation for 21-22. We're working on the 21-22 compensation schedule. And we are currently looking at a 2 to 3% of midpoint for all the pay grades that are on from 101 all the way to 512, as well as giving the same type of compensation to the bus drivers and monitors. But one thing that we need to really look at is we need to build back up our teacher salary schedule. Because I just did 0, 5, 10, 15, and 20. And as you can see, we're the second lowest pay in Bexar County. We're well below the average. Third lowest for 5 years, 10 years, 6th, 15 years, 4th, 20 years, 4th. So we are committed to do what we need to do to compensate our teachers to the best of our ability without breaking our budget. But to show them that, yes, we are going to look at that and come up with a fair compensation schedule for our teachers that we show them we want them to stay at East Central. So that is something we're working on. And I've talked to other school districts and they're also looking at 2 and 3%. They won't always tell you what they're gonna do for the teachers because they're all like little shady deals, but eventually we just have to kind of watch what they're gonna do and we have to stay in comparison.
Competitive, yeah. So is there any truth to districts offering bonuses and stipends for their teachers after this year that they've been through in order for them to stay?
So one of the allowable expenditures of the ESSER funds is to consider something like that as a one-time deal.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility, and that's definitely something that's come up in the committee's preliminary discussions.
Is there any truth to the fact that there's districts doing that? Have y'all heard of it? Any districts?
Well,
that are
nobody's
currently-
gotten the funds yet.
Or
But
planning to?
definitely some districts have talked about
Talked
doing
about
that.
Yeah, I've heard of one that's planning on doing that.
But it is an allowable expense.
Okay, it is.
Can't use it for salaries, but you can use it for
Use for the
stipends.
bonus or a stipend, okay.
And one more thing about ESSER with this money that's coming in. Yes, we have to spend this money. We need to spend this money. But we also have to watch our state allotments. That we don't say, well, we're gonna spend this money from here and we don't spend our allowable that we have to for special ed or bilingual or state comp ed. So you have to watch what you do. You have to be careful that you're still spending what your 55% for career tech, for special ed, 100% for EEA.
Here comes the CFO, it's coming out.
I know, I'm sorry.
Well, there's a maintenance of effort and maintenance of equity piece
Yeah.
that you have to comply
Yes,
to.
you
So
have
there's
to.
there's some restraints, right,
Yeah.
some guardrails that,
Yeah, and
barriers, if you will.
One more thing with that is that this is the only federal grant that you can supplant. We've never been able to do that before. And by supplanting, let's say if you bought something out of local and you wanted to take it out of the next year of federal, you couldn't because you'd be supplanting. This one is allowing you to supplant, but not for your Title I schools. You still have to spend the same as you did before at your Title I school. All of our schools are Title I schools except the high school. So that gives us a little leeway for the high school. And that will all come out when we start putting the pen and pencil to it and see what we're gonna do. But again, we have to make sure we spend our allotments from our state. Okay, and a wise person knows when to stop and let somebody else take over. So I'm gonna let Shannon and then I'll wrap it up.
Judy? Well, just to kind of reiterate what Judy said, it was nice to listen to Ashley and Shannon's presentation about all the work that our staff are going to be doing to improve the education of our students. So in thinking of that, my mind's going to the 1,300 plus employees that we have out there who are going to make sure all that work happens. And so one of the things that we have really tried hard to do is to improve the employee benefits for our district employees. So we are now 3/4 of the way through year one of our self-funded health insurance plan. And so I talk weekly with our consultant at the UBC, and we just kind of look at the data. And so some of the things that we're already focusing on and looking at this current year and for next year is to increase the utilization of our health and wellness center. So we have about 850 employees on the plan with spouses and dependents. It's about 1,200 members. So we reported last month that our utilization was running around 40% capacity for the clinic. So they can see about 346 patient visits in a month, and we were running about 40% of that. So I've been engaged with the CARE ATC staff. So CARE ATC is who we contract with to run the clinic. And so their team came down and we visited some of the campuses and we distributed some materials in the teacher's lounge, met some of the principals. That was about a month ago. And then last week, they came down again, and we are currently doing our spring enrollment for supplemental benefits. So the CARE ATC staff came in and they were meeting our employees as they were coming through to talk to the insurance rep and just reiterating what a great benefit they have with our UBC plan to go to the health and wellness center. So some of our next steps are going to be to have them come back in the summer when we're doing our actual health insurance enrollment for next year, and just get in front of the staff and just say, hey, don't forget you have this great benefit. We did a lot of that last year. That's how we got 850 people to enroll. And so with COVID, I think some people were afraid to go to any medical facility whatsoever. So now that things are improving, I think people will be returning back to going to the doctor and for their checkups and so forth. We are going to create a video, and so I met with Sam and I today, went out and we spoke to Dr. Hill. She is the physician at the Health and Wellness Center, and we talked to her for almost an hour, and she just kind of gave us some feedback, and the CARE ATC people gave us feedback too. When they met with employees last week, the people who had visited the clinic had really great things to say about their experience. They were very excited about it, and some people had not yet tried it, and so Dr. Hill already started seeing patients last week just from CARE ATC going out there and engaging that. So we're going to create a video. That video we're going to be able to use in the summer when we onboard, the new staff for the year. So we typically have onboarding meetings with them, and so we'll be able to share this video so that they know exactly what benefit that they have with the clinic. So again, it meets all their primary care needs. They can do blood work, lab work, smoking cessation, weight loss, acute illness visits. It really does everything, and it's at no cost to the employee. In the next month or so, we'll really be trying to set our premiums for next year. So I'll be working with the consultant there. We'll be looking at our claims history for the year and establishing what our rates are going to be. So we hope to be setting those in June, since our enrollment will occur in July. The rumor on the street is that TRS is going to have to increase theirs significantly for next year. So we'll promote continued enrollment, and hopefully everybody who's enrolled in our plan is satisfied and they'll stay on our plan, and we're hoping that our new employees that we onboard this year will enroll in our plan. And then one thing that we just never got with TRS was, what is the health of our population. We don't know that. We never had access to any of that information. So the further we get into the year and we have more claims history, that'll help us look at the data to see, does our population have a need for diabetic type treatments or hypertension, and try to target and do things to promote the health and wellness of our actual population. So again, it was great to talk to Dr. Hill. With TRS, it was so expensive that most people could only afford the high deductible plan. So unfortunately, that meant every time they would go to the doctor, maybe they were gonna have to pay out of pocket. And even if it was a well visit, then if they diagnosed them with something, it became no longer a well visit, and maybe they had to pay for it. So I think a lot of people just didn't take the time to go to the doctor. And so what happens is you end up in the emergency room one day because you have hypertension, you didn't know it, and you have a heart attack, and you just weren't taking care of your health. So we're really trying to encourage people, our staff, to take the time and invest in themselves, and so that we can have better health outcomes. So, it's not just a financial benefit, that we have here, but hopefully it's actually going to improve their health and well-being, because we rely on them to educate our kids, and that's a tough job. So, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. All right.
Okay, for a short recap, we have a healthy fund balance. Our tax rate is the lowest. We have a low debt ratio. We talked about ESSER funding, competitive compensation that we're going to be working on, and the employee health care. So, if y'all have any questions?
No.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, appreciate that, doing a good job there.
Well, we can take a short 5-minute or so break, so everybody stretch your legs and maybe take a restroom break, something like that.
Okay.
So we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. Say,
Judy. Group is the Operations and Support Services folks, and so Stevie is going to get us going.
So again, just want to reiterate, we see ourselves as the other side of the house, and Ms. Cavazos and I have this past year led the Operations and Support Services departments. And so we make sure that they get to campus safely on our buses, that they're fed nutritious meals when they're there, breakfast and lunch, that they have the resources they need in the classrooms with technology, and in personnel that they're surrounded by exceptional quality staff, along with making sure their buildings are beautiful and ready every day. So I invited my people who actually do the work in the field to come and present to you their slides. And we're going to start first with Dr. Dykstra in technology.
It's one slide.
You have to do your part.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then I was feeling pretty good. I was pretty relaxed.
Yeah.
And then somebody brought up the audit. And it's just like, anyways, good evening. Our biggest thing for this coming year is cybersecurity. In the last 3-4 years, it just has accelerated. Every year it's gotten worse and worse. And we always keep track of security on the network. It's a big thing. It's always been a big thing. But the number of threats and how fast they're coming out has just made it almost impossible for us to keep up in our normal environment. So this year we're going to be bringing in a cybersecurity analyst. And the number one biggest thing they're going to do is provide that hands-on monitoring, eyes on everything all the time. Because sometimes it's these little things. We have these monitoring programs. And if you see that one, then you know something's going on. Where the network guy may only see this, server guy may only see that, my Google administrator may only see this. If we get Google alert, then we got alert on our SolarWinds for our network, then we get alert from our anti-malware software all at the same time. If somebody's watching all those things, we can pull that together and we can do something fast. Cybersecurity pretty much boils around 3 different areas. Prevention's first. We don't want to crash. And I know my boss can tell you that that's one of the things. There's a lot of late nights for me because I don't want to crash. Today, we know that that's going to happen. So our second thing is mediation. If something does go wrong, how do we get at it? How do we figure out what's going wrong? How do we fix it? Stop the problem. And the last one is recovery. So in the prevention area, some of that deals with simple things that we didn't do before, and that's like training the end user. Security was kind of a thing, we did it in a back room somewhere. But now we've got people in their email and they click on something and it opens up and it attacks the network and sends things all over the place. So we have to deploy training to our staff and our students on what to do with that. So there's a lot of those things that we didn't do before. And so one of the things this position is going to do is going to organize that training and make sure we're putting the right priorities in the right places. Because if this type of threat is out there in the world right now, okay, let's get some training out for that so that we don't get hit. Some of the other things that we do ahead of time is we're adding security, more complex passwords in certain places, 2-factor authentication. And those of you who have gone to log into something and they send you a little beep on your phone and then you have to put in a code number, that's what we're talking about, the 2-factor authentication. So some more of those type of things. And what do we need to back up? That's one of the things in the planning process and the prevention process to make sure we're putting this stuff in place. What are the important things for transportation? And if Google goes down, what's transportation going to do for this part of their services to the people that requires that? If their main scheduling program goes down, what are they going to do? So part of prevention is also putting plans in place for what happens if something goes down. And I think, Mr. Bryan, I think you mentioned that in this very room about Google going down a while back. But it's a real thing. And we have a status board that we look at for Google that tells us what's down and how often it's down. It's not, is it going to go down? It does, which really can affect our teachers. The other thing is the simple reminders. We can train somebody on what to do with their email. But okay, we get comfortable. We forget about it. We need another reminder of a little, maybe a few weeks, a month down the road, 2 months down the road, a little reminder. Remember, if you don't know what it is, don't click on it. Remember, if it sounds too good, probably is, don't click on it. And some of them are really tempting, some of them are really written well. Yeah, $500 million from somebody in Africa? I know there's somebody in Africa wants to send me $500 million. Then we get to mediation, and mediation is how fast can we stop whatever the problem is and get to a point where we can function. You got an infection coming in from somewhere. Sometimes it literally is this simple where you can walk over and you can unplug the stuff going to that campus. Now it's a mess for that campus, but it can keep it from spreading everywhere else. So mediation, this is kind of like the top secret stuff we don't ever talk about. This is the behind the scenes. This is where we send our technicians, our network people and stuff. We send them off to training to learn all the new stuff. So we want to spend a lot of money there to learn how to intercept those things when they're coming in and prevent them from causing a lot of damage. Monitoring is a very big part in that. And the last one is recovery. If we have to restore 30 servers from tape backups, that is a huge amount of time. If we have to restore 30 servers and we've got some of this stuff on the internet that can come over our internet access, and we've got another server farm thing over here and another location that we can restore from, and we're restoring from backups all at the same time, we can bring everything online faster and get our services back up and running. And so the biggest thing we're doing in recovery in the future as we go forward is to find ways so that we can recover faster and faster and faster. Any questions?
Yeah, it is, and I'm not good with that. You have to learn.
Thanks, Dr. D.
I know, thank you very much.
Well, again, we just wanted you to know we have a plan.
Yeah.
I mean, Dr. D and his department have been really proactive in making
Yeah.
sure that our data is secure and our employees know how to use it and how to safeguard
And we
themselves.
rely on that so much,
Totally.
how everything runs, yeah, it's interesting.
So again, child nutrition, y'all know this last year, COVID threw us all for a loop. And we had to find ways to continue to make sure our community and our students were fed and that they had the resources they needed. And so our child nutrition department, when we shut down last March, whenever that was, it seems so far ago, we had a plan to start serving meals. 2 weeks later, Mr. Toscano came to us and said, that's too late. So we said, okay, we can do it in a week. He said, that's too late. So in 3 days, we started another service. And how we.
Really?
Yeah.
Everybody's looking at me.
And so Thomas was right there responsive. Most of you have met Mr. John Thomas. He is our new director for child nutrition. And he's going to talk to you a little bit tonight about our future plans for next year in meal service. And also, this past year, thank you so much, the board did take at the recommendation, we've never had to, child nutrition has always been self-funded. And our revenue was hit very hard this past year with a lot going out and very little coming in. And so y'all did an addendum for the budget to help us out a little bit. And so Mr. Thomas is going to talk about meal service for next year and also how we're going to, our plans to rebuild and recover our revenue. Mr. Thomas?
First of all, I want to tell you, I am not the one that picked this particular picture.
I did.
We're a high energy organization, okay? These guys are sitting here, and this is the first time, these three in particular are always out hustling. So I don't know how they captured them sitting there like that, and I'm like, this is what we bring to the board meeting. I apologize.
They're normally sweating.
No, they're sweating, they've been out hustling. No, thanks for the opportunity to spend a little time talking about the program. I'm going to just briefly cover a couple things with you. Like she said, 21-22 meal service. This last year, we began to do breakfast in the classroom at the elementary schools. This has allowed access to all those students to participate in the program very easily. It doesn't take a lot of class time away or anything like that, but it does help our participation and help all the students access the meal service. The second thing was, we did this last year, was curbside. We're looking at not continuing this next year, but we may be able to pivot and do so depending on some of the decisions we make here in the future. But we might not necessarily need to do that because hopefully we'll have most of the students in the classroom, so we won't need that. But we might have that opportunity to pivot if we do need to do that. The last thing is similar to these boxes that you had tonight. We've been able to send meals out into the classroom so the students can eat there, box them up. It's a little more expensive to do that because it takes a lot more pieces than a traditional tray handing it out, okay? But we're gonna keep that flexibility for those principals, classrooms that are looking to do that next year as well, okay? Revenue recovery. If you've seen the budget numbers this last year, we hit some headwinds when it comes in particular to revenue, okay? We haven't had access to the students that we've had in the past to be able to feed the breakfast and lunches that we did the numbers. It's sheer numbers. We didn't have the numbers to do what we've done in the past. And we still incurred expenses of feeding all the students that we did have. So it was kind of a tough year when it came to that. We're looking at doing the seamless summer option again this next year. We're gonna make a recommendation to administration in the next 2 weeks, hopefully, maybe a week. But it came out from the Texas Department of Agriculture that we were able to do that again. This is allowing all the students to eat for free again, so hopefully we'll be able to do that. We just wanna make sure that we don't have any repercussions outside of what we can anticipate because we're still getting guidance from the state. So that's kind of what we're waiting for. The last thing is TDA set aside $180,000. This is funds that came in the second stimulus. So we're expecting to get that in June, I believe.
Wow.
So, money set aside for child nutrition.
Yeah, so basically they looked at participation revenue
Loss.
pre-pandemic, how much we generated during the pandemic, and the difference, they're gonna give us half.
50%.
So well, thank you, we're grateful, it's better than nothing,
Yeah.
it's not a full recovery.
Yeah.
But that's how they came up with the 180,000, and so it's
I guess
definitely gonna be
some is better
helpful.
than none.
Yeah, it'll be helpful.
It will offset some of the losses that we've had this last year. So we think primarily getting access to the students at the high school next year is gonna offset a lot of the losses.
Yeah.
Are we gonna be back to pre-pandemic numbers in our fund balance? Probably not this year, but we sure wanna make a dent in it in the right direction. So that's what we're anticipating.
Good deal.
All right,
Questions? Mr. Thomas?
you're gonna have another shot at me in 2
Get a
weeks.
little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so transportation, I hope that you've noticed when you're looking out your window in the morning or at least driving around the district that our buses, the average age of our buses, they look beautiful. They are beautiful. We've, in the transportation department, really under the direction of Mr. Urick, have taken intentional steps to make sure that we're looking at our fleet. We're maintaining our fleet. We have preventative maintenance schedules consistently followed. And so Mr. Urick's going to talk to you a little bit about that.
Thank you. All right, thank you for giving me a few minutes to give you guys an update. I was just with everybody last March, so I'm blessed to be around you guys again that quick.
Big win.
Yeah. So just to throw some numbers at you real quick, Ms. Gonzalez talked about that we've updated our fleet. We talked last month at the board meeting about getting the VW grant, which allowed us to get those 26 brand new buses over a 2-year span. We're in the final stages right now of submitted for final reimbursement, and then we're done with that project. But our work doesn't stop there as far as need for fleet. I mean, everyone in here is very well aware of the possible or continued growth, right, of our district. Another area that the longer I do this, the more I'm really kind of figure it out. I mean, we're the second largest district in Bexar County, square mileage wise, behind Northside. And then the closest person after that is we're more than double them. So what that does is, you know, while our overall enrollment, you know, doesn't necessarily rival some of the bigger districts overall, but when you have to go to, you know, zip codes in Commerce and Marion, you know, and stuff like that, it really, really adds, you know, you might not carry as many kids, but you still have a need for a bus. You also have a need for a driver. So we have about 257 vehicles, trailers, light fleet, all that kind of good stuff, cars that we're responsible for at transportation. We have 122 buses. I'm gonna throw some data at you, so Judy will be happy about this. She likes numbers, right? So So which means we have about 135 extra like white fleet, like police units, maintenance vehicles, the whole broad spectrum, everybody else serving in auxiliary departments. Out of those 122 buses right now, we have 100. These numbers are important, that's what I'm talking. I want to try to connect the dots here, but we have 100 vehicles that are regular ed buses, and then we have 22 that are special needs. Okay, so that's even yes. Out of route buses right now, currently we're running 72 route buses. Right, we have 72 route buses, regular and sped combined. All right, that's after consolidating 8 different routes this year due to the low numbers. This past week, we monitor weekly ridership. Last week was the first time that we have touched 40% of our last year's normal daily rate, which was barely broke over 2,000, right? 2,000 kids on a daily basis was the highest that we had. So with those low numbers, we're able to, consolidate some of the routes. So in all honesty, we're gonna have to add those routes back next year. I think we're all excited to get everything back. We already had planned to have 4 other routes, right? Going into this year, and we also took away 4 special needs routes. So that kind of gives you hopefully a little bit overall picture, right, of the need for more routes, more drivers, and the buses. And out of that, like I said, out of the 72 buses, out of the 45 spares that we have, and also left out, there's 5 right now that we're waiting to scrap, right? So we'll do that towards the end of the year in the summer. That gives us a total of 122. So let me go back to my notes real quick. As far as our buses, in the 45 that are spares, guys, 29 of those are 20 years and over, right? Actually, excuse me, 29 of those are 15 years and over. And whenever you buy a new bus, you technically want that bus on a route for about 10 years as a route bus, and you want from year 11 to 15, you want it to be a spare bus. So at 15 years, you want to pretty much retire them, right? So right now we have a good chunk, right, that are we probably need to look at retiring. So there's going to be a need for that, right? We have currently, before the VW grant, we've been doing a really good job, through everybody's help, passing the budget. We were getting about $650,000 a year, in which we would pretty much buy, either 1 year buy all 6 regular ed buses, or 1 year buy one special needs and then the regular, and then God bless us with the VW grant. So, but we can't stop there, right? We have to continue to upgrade our fleet. We have about 26 of those 29 are actually 20 years old, and we actually do have 6 buses that are 27 to 30 years old. So, so those will be the first 6. I'll talk to Mr. Toscano and Stevie. We're talking about, if we have a plan, we basically a 5-year plan, and we can still average 6 buses a year. We can get finally back on track to where we're doing that. And that's with just replacing buses, right? That's not adding to our fleet. So we'll just have to continue to monitor growth for that. 5 years ago, year 2, we were over there. We had to hire John Ewers. One of the main things that Mr. Toscano we talked about, along with Stevie too. My dad always taught me, you take care of something that takes care of you. And so our fleet, while our fleet was older, the preventative maintenance on a lot of the vehicles was kind of non-existent whenever we first got there. So they did it, but over the years, John and I have basically come together, and we've got a very, very set strict of criteria, right? And it's all monitored through Service Finder. I'm a spreadsheet geek, so I like to. Me and he is too, so we've actually used that as well too. We do the oil changes, the tune-ups, the transmission services, the brake services, and that's all strictly done. I mean, we monitor that all the time. We have a part-time shop helper, and then our mechanics, as we bring in buses for other needs, they always do inspection type stuff. Hey, this one's up in the shop. Dustin, Darrell, you gotta take care of it. Mike, Eric, and they'll get those services knocked out. And that's a big reason for why you don't see a whole lot of our buses, in the shop, anymore, as opposed to what, was several years ago. The average age of our fleet right now is 2.7 years old. But going back on the spares, the average age, average age of our route buses in our fleet is 2.7 years old. However, go back to that need to replenish, right? And the average age of our spare buses is like 17, almost 18 years old, right? And so we'll find a way to do better with that. exciting part though, again, I know we've talked about this before, but just a reminder, all of our buses, all of our route buses now have AC, right? So we don't have to get the calls. You know, it's so hot in the buses and everything else. Sometimes we still do because it's 110 degrees out in August, it's still gonna get hot. So they all have GPS cameras. We currently have those 14 buses, right, that are AC with GPS and has spares, which is beautiful because I no longer have to hear from parents in athletics or, you know, whatever else. We're having to send one of those spare buses that are 15, 16 years old with no AC out to Smith Valley or out to, you know, whatever. And I'm like, I'm telling the community guys, I understand my daughter's on that same bus playing volleyball. My son is on that same bus, you know, playing football right now for the district. And so it was nice to be in that situation. But once we add those back to the route buses next year, right, it'll kind of take some of those away. So we have to, again, continue the need to replenish. I think that's pretty much all the focus on it. I just want to really kind of focus on the fleet, the improvements that we made, the areas that we're going to continue to look at. And I'll be happy to answer the questions that you have.
What happens to the buses when you retire them?
They go to bus heads now.
But
There is a heaven. No.
all buses go to heaven.
Yeah, there you go. Great movie, great movie. Do the voiceover for it next. No, so currently right now, we could either, when we retire, some of them, whenever we get rid of them, whenever we done it via auction sometimes, we will also take it, we use salvage place off 181 right now, and that's where we've been getting rid of everything as far as for our VW buses. Now that is a lot of extra work until, because we have to meet the needs of the grant, right? But if we're just getting rid of, again, taking it off the book, so to speak, we have to submit all that paperwork into Mr. Morgan and all the, basically the vehicle's history in a folder. So whenever he lines up the auction or whatever else, he handles all that title work and transfer stuff. And then we have to make sure that we get a non-repairable title and all of this stuff to make sure it's off the books for us. So, good question.
All right, thank you.
Is there any recommendation of when you're supposed to retire bus? Is it mileage or about a year?
Well, and I'll be honest, as far as mileage wise, like the standard that we've always kind of heard and talking to other directors, and you want to do something, because right now we average about close to 15,000 miles a year on a bus, right? So, and we have all of the newer buses that we've been having have been at the Cummins diesel engine, and they're a great engine. They've done a great job for us. But when you talk about actual numbers, you're talking about anything new to 10 years old on a route bus, anything to 15 years. You want as a sub bus, less than 15. After that, look at kind of trying to retire it.
Trying to get out there, okay. That's for safety reasons?
For that, and for also because the older the bus gets, the pricier it gets to buy parts, and the pricier it gets, and the more time you have to spend, time is money, obviously, right? So if we're having that in the shop.
That's the biggest thing to make this, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair.
So, Ms. Sanders is gonna come up and talk to you a little bit about the personnel department. Their focus has been and will continue to be on making sure that our schools are staffed, and not just our schools, but every department and every person coming in is of quality and meets a standard for not only an EC employee, but also for that department. So we're gonna be talking about quality staff. Ms. Sanders?
Hi, thank you everyone for allowing me to speak to you for a few minutes regarding what personnel will be, part of what personnel will be focusing on like for this school year. So as Ms. Gonzalez said, quality staff is our focus, making sure that we've got that quality staff in the classrooms, whether it be our teachers, our paraprofessionals, making sure we have quality custodial staff. So to help us with that, one of the things that we are going to be working on this year and actually for the next few years is the teacher incentive allotment. So with what we call TIA, another acronym, with TIA, that is going to help us establish a system to develop designations for our teachers that will target and identify high-quality teachers to put into our classrooms for campuses, right, that might have some high needs. So that's part of what we're going to be working on, is working on that system to create those designations. Along with that, that is going to incentivize teachers, so allowing for some pay for those designations. but really to hopefully make us more competitive with other districts as we continue to recruit. Along with that, TIA, or Teacher Incentive Allotment, our personnel is working collaboratively with curriculum, Dr. Fuller, with Ms. Burns in finance, also with Region 20 and stakeholders. Will be having some stakeholder groups come in the fall to help us with this system as we move through the next probably 1 to 3 years. So another piece of quality staff and recruitment and retaining, and Ashley mentioned this earlier, really have learned a lot right through this pandemic, just in so many different areas. And so one of the things that we learned this year, a lot of what we do, part of what we do is job fairs. So that job fairs face-to-face just kind of went away, right, with COVID. We weren't able to go out to the universities, meet with alternative certification programs. So what happened last spring is that a lot of the universities and programs moved to virtual job fairs. And so with that brought platforms that we now utilize for those virtual job fairs. And one of the ones that we've really learned a lot about and has really broadened our reach is Handshake. And so knowing the work that the Equity Committee is doing and knowing that we need to broaden our reach and reach some more diverse populations, Handshake has really allowed that to happen. We have had people, we just had a Handshake job fair last week where we spoke to people from New York and Wyoming. So we have, I don't think in the 10 years I've been here, we've even spoken to anybody from New York or Wyoming. So it just really is allowing us to have that far-reaching effect outside of not only San Antonio, but Texas. So we're hoping that with that, we can give our principals more options, more diverse options, out of state as we continue to recruit in the future. So, any questions on quality staff for our recruitment and retiring? Retention, I'm sorry.
How does the recruitment of teachers from outside the state of Texas impact our teacher certification requirements?
Okay, so that's
Are
a good
there
question.
states out there that have reciprocal agreements?
That's an excellent question. I actually spoke to our rep at Region 20, Kathy Sabathis, this morning about that because that has been a big concern. Typically, or in the past, when teachers come from out of state, it is a very arduous process that they have to go through to get certified here in Texas. What she shared with me this morning is that TEA has loosened those requirements quite a bit. So what the teachers from out of state have to do is complete a form through TEA, provide proof, that they're certified in another state, that they passed the exam requirements for that state, and pretty much TEA is certifying them here in Texas. So it's gotten a lot easier to complete that process for teachers coming from out of state.
So are those a provisional certification that then turns into the recertification process in Texas, or is that?
So there are some states, and again, it depends on the state. They will kind of look at that reciprocity, of the exams and the certification. Sometimes it will just be a 1-year certificate, and in that 1 year, the teacher has to meet the Texas requirements. But then again, depending on the state, they could just provide the documentation that they've taken the exam and they're certified, and then they would just give them what we call a standard certificate in state.
Thank you.
And if you'll keep in mind, a couple of years ago when we became a district of innovation, we came to y'all and talked about how we wanted to simplify the process for our CTE teachers and bringing people from directly in the field to be able to adapt to the classrooms. And because of our district of innovation, we've been able to expedite those processes for the harder to find positions in CTE. So again, in collaboration with Handshake and really listening to our partners on the curriculum side about wanting to increase our staff and bring more diversity. And really, we know we're growing. If we look at our demographers report, in 10 years, we'll almost double our population. So we've got to have candidates for our administrators and our department people to look at that are quality. So we've got to build that pool. And so we're really trying to actively look for some ways to bring more resources to them. So, any questions for Ms. Sanders?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, all of you know that Miss Linda has let us know that she's gonna be retiring in a couple of weeks. Yes. I know. So, maintenance and operations are two of the responsibilities, two of her major departments that she did that are gonna be coming my way. So, with Mr. Thomas's help in maintenance and with Mr. Morgan's help, Matt Morgan, in custodial, we're gonna be picking up some, and trying to keep forward some of the things that are, all of the things that Ms. Cavazos has started. And just in the last couple of weeks that she started schooling me on, you gotta do this, you gotta do this, you gotta do this. I've learned that our maintenance and operations department through custodial, they really have some great systems already in place. I'm very pleased to see that their communication system within their department is very elaborate. They've got notes going back 4 years. So, Linda said, read these. And I'm like, there's 4 years here. So, the communication that they already have said internally is just fantastic. Another thing that they already have is they have really structured their supervision of their department and their hierarchies so that the work gets done really well. They have their directors, and then they have their supervisors, and then they have their foremen, and then they have their teams by department, by specialty. So that's just going to continue, and it's going really well. They also have, one of the things is they've really invested a lot in technology and resources and programs to support their work, to help monitor their work, to help track their work, to make sure that they're meeting their needs. So all of those systems are already in place. But some of the things that we're going to continue to work on is making sure that we have preventative maintenance schedules. And those are for things like that have to happen cyclically, that we want to make sure we have a plan for HVAC systems, for painting our campuses, for landscaping, for the things that we know are coming. We've got to have schedules in place for those. So those are the things that we're going to be working on, one of the things. Also, making sure that they have the resources they need in a consistent manner. What do our lawnmowers look like? Are the custodians using buffers that still work? What are their replacement schedules for their equipment? Other things that come up are mowers. I've never even thought I would think of these things. Weed eaters, blowers, buffers. So we're gonna make sure that we have systems in place for all of the equipment and the equipment replacement schedules. And I'm very blessed that Linda left me an elaborate resources for that too. Capital improvement strategic planning. So for every campus and every building, y'all been on tours lately and you've seen our facilities. They look beautiful. Some of them are very old and they still look brand new. We need to make sure that we have a 1-year, 3-year, 5-year plan for making sure that that campus, that facility continues to be applicable, that it continues to be what we need. So we're going to start looking at that too. Asset and resource management. This is a project that we started a couple of years ago, really, with making sure that we're tracking all of our assets in the district, and not just our big assets, but also in the curriculum department and our other departments, our resource management systems. So we're working on establishing those kinds of systems and making them very easy to use so that we make sure we know where our money's going and we have a good record of where it is. And then leadership development. We've got some really great people working in our maintenance and our custodial departments. And what we found is that when they're really good at their job, we're promoting them to a higher level. Okay, you're really good at what you're doing, so you're going to be an assistant head custodian. You're really good at that, so you're going to be a head custodian. But one of the things we want to continue to do is, because someone is really good at the job that they do does not necessarily mean that they know how to lead another group. It's a different skill set. You know, we're all worker bees, or we wouldn't be in the positions that we are. So we're good at what we do. But we've got to continue to invest in them and make sure they have the skill set to lead. Not just manage, but to lead. So we're going to, with intent, make sure that we're building that leadership training within the maintenance and, well, all of the departments, the maintenance and custodial also. Questions on that? Because Ms. Linda's here to answer them. Okay, so just to recap. With technology, we're going to be focusing on cybersecurity. With child nutrition, our meal presentation and participation, really want to increase that. With transportation, our fleet utilization and preventative maintenance, with personnel, quality staff, recruitment and retention, and with maintenance and custodial, we're gonna be looking at continuing our exceptional facility maintenance.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Thank you.
That's a lot of good information. Thank you all very much.
Yes, thank you.
Fantastic.
See, we have some things about the learning and things.
Well, just before we adjourn, and we'll be bringing you a formal report and possible recommendations on the 20th, regular meeting. But over the last couple of months, we've surveyed our community to ask the level of interest in their child accessing school remotely next year, while also making it clear to the community that that requires legislative action, because as it currently exists, we cannot serve students remotely next fall and receive ADA. So there are bills filed, one in particular by Representative Keith Bill is moving. So if it's allowable, and under the conditions that it's allowable, we have explored the possibilities of what that might look like. Having engaged the community, there were about 800 families who expressed initial interest. Once we talked about the criteria, which were going to involve, they had to have a demonstrated medical need, they had to have demonstrated academic success this year in a remote environment. Those were number 1 and 2. And then beyond that, we would look at other variables like, can we meet their academic needs in a remote setting? And do we offer the courses that they prefer, right? Particularly at the secondary level. And so after expressing those requirements to the community, we asked them if they're still interested, we'll send you an application. So there were about 400-ish after the criteria that said that they would be interested in the application. After receiving applications, a portion of those, we went through the approval process at every campus. We're sitting at about 140 students, pre-K to 12th grade. At no grade level in the system is it enough to even make the class. So our options currently are to forego that option, to consolidate grade levels for a teacher. The statute that might pass does not allow for concurrent teaching, which our feedback from teachers were, listen, we're doing what we can this year, but we can't teach secrets face-to-face. And we responded and said, if we offer remote, that will not be the case. But we couldn't anyway. So that's off the table. And then the third option is to enter into a cooperative arrangement with other districts who also maybe have few kids and try to build a first grade that's actually big enough to justify a teacher and share the cost. So we want to explore every possibility before we bring you recommendations. We have coordinated a sit down with Shirt, Cibolo, and Judson, since they're near us, to talk about their projected numbers, our projected numbers, and what a cooperative arrangement might look like if we can all agree to what our programs would entail and what our requirements would entail. But the reality of it is, after everything, we may come with a recommendation to forego a remote option because of the small number of students. The other thing we know is that 16-year-olds and older have had access to the vaccine, and we've offered vaccines. We had the National Guard here offering vaccines yesterday, and we'll continue to do that weekly. In the next week or so, they've already been distributed 12-year-old and up vaccines, and in the upcoming weeks, we understand there'll be vaccines available for 5-year-olds and up. So given that as well, as the low numbers that we've had actually qualify and interested, we might be leading again towards a possibility of not offering remote instruction as an option for next year. However, we're going to continue to visit with other districts, look at all, really just turn over every stone and make sure that we're not missing options that could be available. And we'll bring that to you on the 20th as kind of a findings and possible recommendations, get your direction, and then I'll engage the community in what the decisions have been.
All right.
Those kind of numbers don't sound much more than what we would normally lose to a charter environment.
Possibly. So yeah, and the other thing that we're exploring is so for those that are just not comfortable, we'll give them the options that they have available as well. And we'll bring those to you as well on the 20th.
But how strongly does just not comfortable stand when you're at the point where 5-year-olds are getting the vaccine, 12-year-olds are getting the vaccine, and then, I mean, how long does that go on that you're not comfortable? You know, is that, I mean,
And again, all of this is pending, that bill's gotta actually pass, because if it doesn't pass, we couldn't offer it even
yeah,
if we wanted to.
right.
So it's really, and the community's very aware, all the parents that were interested, are very aware. This is just an exercise for us to all prepare together in the event
Yeah.
we have interest and can, but this could all be undone if the bill, if there's no legislative action
Correct.
authorizing.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of where we are today. More information on the 20th, to
Okay.
follow.
Sounds
To the
good.
board.
All right.
Perfect.
Good job, Mr. Chief.
Anybody have any questions?
Do it.
Just want to thank everybody for the reports, appreciate it.
Pretty exceptional folks, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, good
We're
team.
very glad.
Anyway, with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So we got a motion.
We're done.
Oh, you got me all.